The Roman root of Greece. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101, Army Reform. In this international environment, it is impossible for Greece to find allies that it can rely on. Therefore, King George's so-called idea of winning over Serbia and Bulgaria is basically unrealistic. It's just that the conflict between Greece and Ottoman Turkey is imminent. Seeing that King George was still hesitant, Trikoupis continued, "Recently, there has been another riot in Crete. Several Orthodox Christians have died. The nationalist sentiment of the domestic people is rising, and the pressure of public opinion is growing bigger in this case. Your Majesty, it's better for the army to prepare for the unexpected, and recently, there have been more and more incidents of making things difficult for Greek businessmen in the Ottoman territory," Trikoupis said. "These Greek businessmen, whose interests have been damaged, are increasingly dissatisfied with the weak attitude of the Greek government, and naturally want to put pressure on him, the Prime Minister, through the parliament. A large number of islands in the Aegean Sea, including Crete, are still Ottoman territories, but the Greeks are the majority on the islands. For many years, the residents of Crete have been strongly demanding that they merge with Greece, but with a military budget of 200 million drachmas, can the government do it?" King George asked Trikoupis. "Greece's economic situation has been very good in the past 2 years, and the government's annual fiscal revenue growth has almost reached 10%, and considering that this investment is not a one-time investment, but a plan for the next 5 years, although the government's finances are not very generous, it can still be done," Trikoupis replied. "In recent years, Greece's economic development has obviously accelerated after gaining the management rights of the Congo, which is one of the reasons why Trikoupis agrees with this proposal. As for the attitude of the army, there is no need to ask. The government has increased the investment in the army, and the army can't object. Just look at the eager expression of the Chief of Staff Emma Enor." "Well, I agree to the plan," said King George with a sigh in his heart. King George made a decision. The themes of the 19th century were empire and conquest, iron blood and war. "Wait a minute," Constantine interrupted suddenly. Seeing the attention of the audience, Constantine said unhurriedly, "With a military spending of 200 million drachma, there is no doubt that the Greek army will undergo a reborn change. In this case, Your Excellency Chief of the General Staff, the army should there be reforms." Constantine looked at Emmanuel and said Emmanuel knew what Constantine was talking about. That is the staff system. The German staff system is known as the greatest military invention of the 19th century. Through the 3 dynastic wars, Putin, Po and France, Germany proved to the world the power of the general staff system. For example, the Schlieffen Plan, the revolving door plan, in the original time and space war, in the Scythe operation in World War II, the defeat of France in 1 month, are masterpieces of the German general staff. Prior to this, although the Greek army also followed a European trend and established a staff system, due to its weak national strength, the number of high-quality officers was relatively small. While the German staff system required a considerable number of high-quality officers, this system is not something that economically backward countries can learn. Therefore, regarding the staff system that originated in Germany, the Greek army just learned from the cat and the tiger. But now, with the promotion of compulsory education by the Royal Greek Education Foundation, the literacy rate of the Greek people has been increased, and it has provided convenience for the Greek army to select talents. Although Emmanuel is the chief of staff of the Greek army, he cannot formulate a perfect military plan at all. In fact, I can't blame Emmanuel for dereliction of duty. To formulate a complete military plan is far beyond the ability of an individual, but a work that can be completed by an organizer with a perfect division of labor and a large number of people. For example, although Greece faces a serious threat from the Ottoman Empire, due to the lack of sufficient intelligence and personnel, the Greek military top has no plan to deal with this threat. Emmanuel Noel, the Chief of General Staff, did not have enough personnel to conduct intelligence collection work on the Ottoman Empire for a long time. These intelligence work included political, internal and external policy, military, strategy, technology, army deployment, tactics, as well as countries and people, economy, management, culture, immigration, mining, agriculture, forestry, trade, transportation and communication, railway transport, road transport, telegraph, shipping, etc. These all-encompassing information is far from something that can be accomplished with a few staff officers in the Greek army. Even Emmanuel worked hard and had a lot of ingenuity to miraculously formulate a highly feasible military plan. Without the perfect coordination of the staff system, it is impossible to take the plan from paper. Only by relying on the military chief implement the German general staff system tells the world that modern warfare is a complex act, and it can no longer be commanded and dealt with just by relying on the personal experience and knowledge of the military commander. And Constantine planned to take this opportunity to adapt the army. By the way, www.wuxiaspit.com, instead of simply adding some technical weapons to the army. Hearing Constantine's request, everyone present was attracted. "Your Highness, do you want to reorganize the army? Even if it can be done, it will probably take a long time to run in," Emmanuel said. "After all, no words. Just look at King George. After all, he was the supreme commander of the Greek army." King George kept rubbing his eyebrows with his left hand, considering Constantine's proposal, and finally made a decision. "Since the high military expenditure of 200 million drachmas has been spent, then try to be as perfect as possible. From today onwards, Prince Constantine's military rank will be promoted by one level, from brigadier general to major general, to assist the chief of general staff to carry out necessary reforms in the army." King George I said majestically to everyone. Although the king's words were to ask Constantine to assist Emmanuel in reorganizing the army, everyone understood that it should actually be the other way around and let Emmanuel assist Constantine. When the matter with the Greek army came to an end, Emmanuel asked Constantine, "Your Highness, I heard that the Congolese government is going to buy warships." "That's right. In fact, everyone including Banning understands that in name, the Congo bought the warships, but in fact, Greece bought them." The reason why Emmanuel was curious about this was also because Greece's navy was weak. Hundreds of thousands of Greek people live on the islands of the Aegean Sea. Once Greece and the Ottoman Empire conflict, the navy is essential to recover these islands. However, after the Greek government invested 200 million marks into the army's military expenditure, in the short term, it will not take into account the navy. Therefore, Emmanuel has this question. Chapter 102, Buy Warships. Speaking of this, Constantine said to the crowd, "This time the Congolese government will need a lot of crew to buy the warship. My current plan is to let the British shipyard build it." "What is the strength of Turkey's navy now?" "Turkey's navy was severely damaged in the Sinop naval battle before the Crimean War and was almost lost," Emmanuel explained to everyone, "until the succession of Sultan Abdullah Aziz in 1861. The Sultan attached great importance to the construction of the navy. During his 10-year reign from 1861 to 1871, the Ottoman navy adopted self-built, assembled, and outsourced. The number of ironclad ships reached 15, but since Aziz, especially after the last Russo-Turkish War, 1878, the Ottomans were financially strapped, few new warships were in service, and the navy became the outcast of the empire. Hearing this, Constantine had a general understanding of the naval strength of Ottoman Turkey. In Europe, it was probably at the third-rate level. There was a navy department. The 19th century was the era of rapid development of naval warship technology, and various new technologies emerged one after another. A warship may be completely behind in a few years of launching. These old-fashioned ironclad ships that have served for 20 to 30 years, according to Ottoman's industrial capabilities, lag behind. It is difficult to say whether these warships can still leave the port due to the maintenance method and lack of financial resources. To be honest, poor countries like Greece and the Ottomans put their limited military spending into the army, and the cost-effectiveness will be higher. Why? In the impression of European countries, Greece, Serbia and Bulgaria are the three small powerhouses in the Balkans, and Greece is the weakest. This is because Bulgaria and Serbia are both land countries, and they can put all their military expenditures into the army, while Greece's special national conditions cannot do this. Itself is a peninsula, Greek peninsula, and there is another Aegean Sea. Large swathes of the island want to be recaptured. If it weren't for the Congo's wallet, Constantine would not have agreed to let Greece get involved in the navy now. In addition to building warships, I plan to select a group of people from the navy to go to the United Kingdom to receive training in the modern navy. Your Excellency Chief of Staff, please arrange it, Constantine said. Greece also currently has an Athens naval school, although the Greek navy is just some small gunboats. For a country with a developed maritime industry like Greece, the maritime culture is almost imprinted in the blood, which is a major advantage for Greece to develop its navy. Prime Minister Terry Kupis, it's up to you to go to England to discuss the purchase of warships, King George interjected. Constantine, After all, this time Congo bought warships. Where do you plan to set up the home ports of these warships? King George asked. Congo. Constantine replied without hesitation. The reason for this is that Constantine did not want to stimulate the Ottomans. The Aegean Sea is not large. Once the news of Greece's purchase of new warships spread, it is difficult to say how the Ottomans would react. Second, the entire Mediterranean Sea is like a large bathtub, and the waves are not disturbed. Since the money has been spent, it must show its value. After spending a long time in the calm Mediterranean Sea, what kind of elite navy can be trained? Naturally, these navies were sent to the vast Atlantic Ocean to fight against the wind and waves, and to temper the tenacious fighting spirit of the sailors. After expressing his thoughts to everyone, Emmanuel questioned, "It is possible to train an elite navy in this way, but once there is a war in the Aegean Sea, these sailors who are accustomed to the sea conditions of the Atlantic Ocean do not understand the waterways and sea conditions of the Mediterranean Sea." How to do, when a conflict broke out between Greece and the Ottomans, these warships must have participated in the war. If they did not know the geography of the Aegean Sea at all, accidents would easily occur, such as running aground and hitting a reef. It's not difficult. It can be solved by having the local Greek Navy crew and the Congolese fleet communicate closely with each other, said Armament Minister Giannis. After the military conference, Constantine personally sent Prime Minister Trikoupis and the naval personnel accompanying him to England to the port of Piraeus. Procurement of warships is a very demanding task, and these active personnel in the Greek Navy will help the Prime Minister decide on the procurement of warships. The reason why King George asked Prime Minister Trikoupis to go is to consolidate and maintain the friendly relations between Greece and the United Kingdom. After all, the last time the British warship blocked the waters near Athens, the people in Greece had a big drop in their goodwill towards Britain. The dominance of the British is also the reason why Greece is so unhappy with the British in the original time and space. But the British, as world hegemons, were at their peak in the late 19th century. As a small country, Greece could only bear the burden of humiliation. It is impossible to completely ignore Britain because of this. Second, this military purchase, to a certain extent, is actually paying for protection. Arms is a special commodity. Advanced weapons are not something you can buy with money for some weak countries. With this warship purchase, it is most suitable for Greek Prime Minister Trikoupis to go there on the pier. Constantine took the royal carriage and personally saw Trikoupis off. "Your Highness, do you have any instructions for this warship purchase?" Trikoupis asked. After all, the owner of this warship purchase is nominally the Kingdom of Congo, and King Constantine's opinion should still be taken seriously. Looking at the young officer in a neat naval uniform beside Trikoupis, Constantine wondered, "Who is this, Pavlos?" Conspiracies. www.uxiaspit.com was previously a captain on a naval patrol boat, a talent I personally selected from the Greek Navy, and this time accompanied me to the UK. Trikoupis replied, "Then, let this professional talk about what warships we should purchase. After all, I am not a professional navy," Constantine said happily. Seeing Constantine asking, Conspiracies gave a solemn salute, and then replied, "Your Highness, Prime Minister, I think cruisers are more appropriate." Seeing that neither of them interjected, he continued, "The Congo region has a special location. It is far away in Africa and is in the cracks of the colonies of various countries. If an ironclad ship is stationed here, it will be more conspicuous." Ironclad ships were the main force of the navies of various countries at this time, with heavy guns and helmets. Due to the heavy armor and large caliber artillery, they were all accessories with amazing weight. Therefore, the speed of ironclad ships was relatively slow, like an iron turtle. Moreover, ironclads are expensive and slow, which do not meet the requirements for maintaining the safety of the Congo-Athens route. We in Greece are not as wealthy and powerful as the United Kingdom. We have sufficient budget to build warships. We can't do the luxury of the British Navy. In order to perform specific tasks, we specially build a kind of warship. Therefore, the Greek Navy cannot be like the British Navy. Like the Navy, the ironclad ships have ferocious firepower and reliable armor, and they are for the main decisive battle, and the cruisers are for auxiliary functions, and the speed is relatively fast. The Greek Navy can't do this. Let the warships perform their duties. In Britain in the late 19th century, the annual naval expenditure was approximately equal to the annual fiscal revenue of the Qing dynasty. Therefore, an armored cruiser with a certain speed and reliable armor is the best choice for Greece, which can perform multiple roles. Chapter 103, Improve the General Staff. 15 days after Trikoupis and his party went to England, Constantine in the Tatoi Palace received a telegram from the ship purchasing team. The ship purchasing team preferred the Esmeralda-class protected cruiser. This is the representative work of the British protection cruiser. The three indicators of firepower, armor and maneuverability are relatively balanced by Esmeralda. The Esmeralda cruiser is a cruiser produced by the British Armstrong Company for Chile. At the end of the 19th century, it was the time when the navies of Argentina, Chile and Brazil in South America were competing with a displacement of 3,000 tons. It is equipped with a 6,000 horsepower double expansion steam engine, which can allow the ship to run to 18.25 knots. For protection, it adopts a dome structure without broadside armor, and the average thickness is 25 millimeters. At the same time, 600 tons of coal was completely surrounded around the core engine compartment, forming a solid cofferdam. In terms of firepower, it is equipped with two 254mm MKIIVL/32 breech guns, 6 152mm MKIIVL/40 rapid-fire guns, and a bunch of 6-pounder and 2-pounder rapid-fire guns, which are absolutely fierce. Such firepower, speed and protection fully met the requirements of Chile, and instantly became a tyrant in the South American Sea. Such a relatively balanced protective cruiser is indeed suitable for Greece at this time. It is usually used to cruise and maintain trade lines. Even in wartime, its large-caliber artillery can ensure enough damage to the Ottoman ironclad ships threat. It is definitely impossible for Greece to fully adopt armored ships. There is not so much capital. When forced to, such cruisers can also be pulled into the battle line and play the role of battleships. At the same time, they are fast and can outflank. They are really versatile at sea. At the same time, Cantoriadis strongly suggested the purchase of several large torpedo boats newly developed by the British, which the British called destroyers. This kind of warship, whose main weapon is fish, comes and goes like the wind, is flexible, and has a limit speed of 26 knots. At the same time, it is a deadly weapon that can cause heavy damage to large warships at sea as long as it is hit by fish. The interest of the ship-buying team: this type of destroyer is 56.4 meters long, 5.6 meters wide, has a displacement of 275 tons, and has a design speed of 26 knots. It is equipped with 176mm gun and 347mm guns. It can catch torpedo boats without difficulty at sea and carry 3 450mm torpedoes. Used to attack enemy ships. In addition, it can easily catch up with a torpedo boat and surpass the latter, fully proving its ability to capture torpedo boats and compete with other surface ships. The price given by the British was £160,000 for an Esmeralda-class cruiser. Constantine agreed to the suggestion of the purchasing delegation. In June 1889, Terry Cupis placed an order with the Armstrong Company, 2 Esmeralda-class cruisers, 6 destroyers, torpedo boats, together with some torpedoes and shells, spare gun barrels, a total of £500,000's price. At the same time, the United Kingdom will be responsible for training 500 crew members for the next 2 years. As for the money, the Congolese government will pay in installments and pay the corresponding fees according to the construction progress of these warships in the shipyard. According to the plan, after delivery, 2 cruisers and 3 destroyers will form a cruiser formation and will be dispatched to the mouth of the Congo River to protect the safety of the place. The other 3 destroyers will be handed over to the Greek Navy to patrol and guard the Aegean Sea. Although the naval lineup of 2 cruisers and several destroyers was still a bit thin when it had a sea conflict with the Ottomans, there was absolutely no problem in maintaining the safety of the Greek coastal waters. Taking into account the Ottoman Navy, due to the lack of military spending in recent years, there are even no warships leaving the seaport in a few years. As long as the Greek Navy trains normally and the warships are properly maintained, the control of the Aegean Sea may not necessarily be out of control in Greece during wartime. Hence, after the naval affairs came to an end, Constantine focused all his energy on the army. At the Defense Ministry building in the center of Athens, Constantine and the Chief of the General Staff, Emmanuel, discussed the improvement of the Greek General Staff. "Your Highness, where do you think we should start?" Emmanuel asked. With the personal consent of King George and the permission of Prime Minister Terry Cupis, in 4 to 5 years, 200 million drachmas were invested in the military to carry out a comprehensive renovation of the army. As the Chief of Staff, Emmanuel is naturally eager to try. "Let's start by perfecting the functions of the staff first," Constantine said while sitting on the sofa facing Emmanuel. "First of all, the General Staff is recruiting more professionals. When I say professionals, I don't necessarily mean officers." Hearing Constantine's explanation, Emmanuel was rather confused. The general staff recruited people, but they were not necessarily military commanders. He said, "It's not an officer, so what are you recruiting for the staff?" Seeing Emmanuel's puzzled expression, Constantine had to explain. "For example, Your Excellency Chief of the General Staff, does our Greek army have a clear map of the Balkans? Military level? If not, should we recruit some surveyors to do map surveying work?" In the 19th century, accurate maps were very important. In this era without printers, almost every map had to be done manually by cartographers. Moreover, it also requires cartographers to conduct on-site surveys and then hand-paint them little by little. Therefore, drawing maps in this era is not only a task that requires patience, but also requires cartographers to inspect various places when marching and fighting. If you don't understand the terrain, it's like a blind man riding a blind horse. When the two armies face off, the military map is an important source of information for the commander. If you don't understand the terrain, how does the commander send troops? You also know that www.uxiaspit.com. Your Highness, apart from this big move, the military expenditure of the Greek army has always been tight, as you said, to draw an accurate map, which in itself requires a lot of manpower and material resources. It requires huge financial support, Emmanuel said embarrassingly. How can the Greek army have any accurate maps? Even if there is military expenditure, under the huge military threat of Turkey, it will also give priority to expanding the army. After all, such a solid increase in strength is better than a few more military maps, which makes people safer sense. So, since the military budget is abundant now, a surveying and mapping office is set up under the general staff, mainly to survey and map the places where the Greek army may fight in the future. Let's not talk about other places, the European part of the Ottoman Empire. You should always give priority to mapping," said Constantine. For example, the Macedonial region and the Albanian region, the military maps of these places are given priority to surveying and mapping. In the event of a conflict with Turkey, maps of these two regions must be desperately needed. Indeed, that's it. It is more dangerous to let the surveyors enter the Ottoman territory alone. You can carry out espionage work in the newly established intelligence office, and at the same time let the personnel of the two departments help each other to complete this task together. Emmanuel is also a point. It is clear that the work that the general staff could not effectively carry out due to the intense military expenditure of Greece can now be carried out. It is indeed more dangerous to conduct surveying and mapping work in a hostile country on a large scale. After all, as long as there are few people who are vigilant, such espionage will be seen through. Well, I can remind a new head of the intelligence department to be formed, and make good use of the large number of Christians in Ottoman Turkey. These people are closer to Greece emotionally. I think they will be willing to help us. Constantine reminded Road Chapter 104, Artillery Problem. Speaking of this, Constantine said solemnly, in addition to assisting in drawing maps, the intelligence department should also pay attention to the development of intelligence personnel in the Ottoman territory to inquire about information, such as political, financial, military, social situation and other intelligence. We all need to be careful, because our relationship with Ottoman is getting worse and worse. This intelligence service will be of great use sooner or later. Constantine eloquently talked about the idea of strengthening the general staff, which he had been planning for a long time. There is also the logistics department and the railway department. Once a war breaks out, it is responsible for controlling railway transportation and roads in Greece and ensuring sufficient supplies for the frontline army. Emma and or added with a smooth implementation of the infrastructure plan of Trikoupis, railways and highways in Greece have already communicated with a considerable number of cities. These transportation facilities mainly provide convenience for economic development and the flow of goods in peacetime. Naturally, in wartime, they need to be used for the military. Used after saying this, Constantine said in a lingering tone, also, officers with rich management experience and actual combat experience in the army are transferred to the general staff to organize them together, conduct research, and learn classic war cases, exploring the key factors in winning and losing war and summarizing the art of war. This method is actually learned from the German staff, which is why the German command structure can give people the impression of being lean and efficient. Of course, the Greek army has not fought for decades since the War of Independence, and the so-called concentration of experienced officers is so-called, said here. Constantine shook his head. Since the Greek War of Independence in 1821, since then, the Greek army has never participated in the war, and most of the officers in the army are young birds without war. How about sending some young officers to go to Germany to study modern military? Emma Enor suggested after hearing this as the chief of staff of the Greek army. No one knows the level of the Greek army better than him now that we have finally encountered sufficient military expenditure. Sending promising young officers to Germany to study the military may be more efficient for the Greek army to innovate tactics. At this time, the strongest army in the European continent is generally recognized as the German army. It's up to you to choose by yourself. You must select those young officers who are flexible and energetic, Constantine emphasized. Schmidt, the attendant who has been by my side in recent years, let him go too. Schmidt has been working hard by Constantine's side all these years. After entering the army, he was Constantine's confidant in the army, just taking advantage of this opportunity. Constantine also intends to help him. After all, these young officers who returned from studying in Germany will definitely be reused in the future. After these functions of the general staff are perfected, you, the chief of the general staff, can be considered a veritable one. Constantine's side, the general staff, known as the command center of the army, is an important institutional guarantee for the army to modernize. With the army of the general staff, we bid farewell to the previous command of the army by relying on the personal experience of the chief military officer, and turn the command of the army into a reproducible system. In this sense, the urgent need of such an army for the so-called famous generals will be greatly reduced. After all, the role of the general staff is to work together and rely on the wisdom of everyone to improve the army's command loopholes. In this case, the general staff can also start to operate normally. According to the currently collected intelligence, a feasible military plan is formulated every year to deal with the current Ottoman military threat. Constantine said solemnly, just to improve the functions of the general staff department requires the recruitment of a large number of personnel, which is expensive, so naturally it has to play a role. Although he was caught off guard, Emmanuel did not object. The formulation of military plans is the core purpose of the general staff began to perform duties. In 1890, the construction of the brain general staff of the Greek army was finally completed. Then, as agreed by Constantine and Emmanuel, nearly 100 officers were dispatched to Germany to study military affairs. After a small number of 1,000 new rifles were installed in the army, they were officially named as the M1890 rifle after a small modification in response to the requirements of the army, and began to be equipped with a large number of Greek troops. The machine factory thus received a large number of rifle orders. The 60mm and 80mm mortars, also produced by the machine shop, were also delivered on a small scale to facilitate technical verification by the troops. The machine factory provided a total of 120 60mm and 80mm mortars to the army so far. Officers in the military are still debating whether to deploy such weapons in large numbers. Some officers believe that this kind of artillery is light. The weight of a 60mm mortar is about 55 kilograms, and it is very suitable as an accompanying weapon for infantry. Needless to say, 2 horses are required for traction. How has the army ever seen such an emergency in which a soldier can hold a moving artillery? Although the opposing officers also agreed with the benefits of its lightness, they criticized the artillery's range of less than 500 meters. Although the mortar's rate of fire was very fast, the rate of fire of the mortar is more than 10 rounds per minute. It is excellent in strengthening the firepower of the army, but it is not of great use. But it is suspected of wasting artillery shells. Constantine was not in a hurry to argue. He just watched the debate between the two factions from the sidelines. However, Constantine was indeed a little anxious about the progress of rapid-fire gun research and development. Follow-up work for the army is the main technical weapon of the army. The status of artillery in the army is unquestionable. Constantine was also a little hesitant about whether the Greek army's artillery should be outsourced or if it insisted on independent research and development and manufacturing. After all, the so-called reserve of 1.5 million rounds of shells cannot be decided by the artillery. How should the caliber of the shells be determined? After watching the live fire performance where a small amount of mortars were delivered to the army, Constantine once again came to the industrial area of Piraeus Port, the machinery factory. Looking at the dejected artillery team and the experimental shooting range of the mechanical factory, there is no doubt that the hydraulic device has again failed. In the conference room, Constantine and the rapid-fire gun research and development team had another meeting to discuss the future of the rapid-fire gun. Is this hydraulic device so difficult to solve? Constantine said unwillingly. The problem of the army's artillery can no longer be delayed. Chapter 105. Keep a secret. Seeing the silence of everyone present, Tesla stood up, walked to the blackboard in the conference room, and said to everyone, "I have a design to solve the current predicament of rapid-fire guns." People in the conference room were immediately attracted to Tesla. After speaking, he picked up the chalk and drew the design diagram on the blackboard used for the demonstration. At the same time, he explained to the crowd, "I made changes to Conrad's design. Under the barrel of the cannon is a bracket on which there are two hydraulic cylinders. The upper cylinder holds hydraulic oil and the lower cylinder holds compressed gas. A port connecting the two cylinders and a floating piston keep the gas and liquid separate. When firing, the liquid is forced into the second cylinder through the port, compressing the air inside until the energy of the recoil force is exhausted. At this point, the gas pushes the floating piston, forcing the liquid back into the first cylinder. This anti-recoil pushes the barrel return to firing position to be ready for the next shot. The system works so smoothly that the gun basically stays in place after a shot and doesn't jump, eliminating the need to retarget before firing again, which greatly improves the speed of fire. If a prototype gun is manufactured according to this design, I think it can overcome the shortcomings of the original hydraulic system oil leakage." The director of the technical office Chamias asked suspiciously, "Are you sure? It is imminent for the Greek army to equip artillery, and it is impossible to delay any longer. According to your design, Mr. Tesla, how long will it take to make a successful prototype?" Constantine knew Tesla well. When he encountered a problem, he always used mathematics first. Inference, he will only carry out physical verification after mathematical reasoning proves that it works. Therefore, seeing that it is Tesla's design, Constantine can be trusted. "About 3 months, Scarlo," replied Constantine, and Chini's exchanged glances, and both nodded. "If possible, the military is still more willing to purchase its own products. First, it will promote the domestic steel and machinery industry. Second, artillery is really expensive, especially if it is purchased in large quantities. Well, after 3 months, if you still can't come up with a sample gun that meets the requirements, the army can only purchase it from abroad," Constantine warned. 3 months later, it was still a shooting range on the outskirts of Athens. After receiving the news that Tesla's rapid-fire gun sample was successfully manufactured, Scarlo, full of confidence and high-spirited, invited a group of high-level military and political leaders in Greece to watch the test firing of the sample gun with permission, under the operation of the artillery crew. First single shot, then 3 bursts, and then rapid bursts of fire. The sound of boom rumble was continuous, and everyone watching was holding a pocket watch. Their lips moved, and they counted the number. After continuously firing 50 shells, the artillery finally stopped moving. Everyone was excited at the moment. Looking at the squad leader of the gun crew, who came to report the test firing results from a distance, it is reported that the artillery fired 50 shells in a row, and no obvious abnormality was found. The people watching couldn't help cheering and congratulating each other. "What is the normal rate of fire for this artillery?" George I couldn't hide the joy on his face, and asked the squad leader of the artillery team, "Your Majesty, in the hands of professional artillerymen who have received artillery training, the rate of fire can reach 20 rounds per minute, and the limit rate of fire can reach 25 rounds. The artillery squad leader replied with a trembling voice. As the elite of the Greek artillery, he has almost come into contact with the artillery of various countries, but it is unheard of with such a fast rate of fire. The artillery generally equipped in various countries generally has a rate of fire of about 2 to 3 rounds per minute. Cavalis, come here." Chief of Staff Emmanuel suddenly said to a soldier in his 30s in the distance, "Your Majesty, Your Majesty, this is the director of the intelligence division of the affiliated General Staff Department," Chamias said, pointing to the soldiers walking over. "From today, this artillery is the top secret of the Greek army, and no one is allowed to touch the rapid-fire gun, especially the hydraulic system of the artillery, without the presence of intelligence personnel," Emmanuel told Chavlis Command. "Can't we artillery?" The artillery squad leader beside him asked. "Even your artillerymen are not allowed to dismantle the artillery, only the personnel of the intelligence department have this right," Emmanuel said solemnly. "It is conceivable that if other countries hear that Greece has such an artillery with a firing rate 10 times that of ordinary artillery, they will definitely try their best to figure out the secret of this artillery. And the biggest secret of this artillery is its floating piston, because it is sealed to prevent liquid and air from mixing." Constantine understood Emmanuel's eagerness to preserve the Greek military technology. The operating manual for this gun can add this: when the piston is removed from the gun body, even these officers are not allowed to see the structure of the piston itself. Constantine echoed. "You reading www.uu can't you?" Captain Chavalis, since you are the head of the intelligence department, the first task of your intelligence department is to keep this artillery secret. After that, various internal regulations were introduced in order to keep the 75mm rapid-fire gun a secret. Only specific artillery repair and maintenance personnel can perform repair and maintenance tasks, and they also have officers present to supervise when they work. Mr. Tesla, congratulations on another outstanding invention, Constantine said, looking at Tesla, who was equally excited. I just hope you can understand that in order to keep the unparalleled secret of this artillery, enough to drive the armies of various countries crazy, don't introduce this special piston structure in various scientific journals in the near future, Constantine said with guilt. In order to be able to keep the secret for the Greek army on the expected battlefield, Constantine planned to block all possible channels for leaking information without leaving a single loophole. Mr. Scalloy, when will your machinery factory be able to put this rapid-fire gun into production? Constantine asked Scalloy, the head of the machinery factory. George and Emmanuel also looked at Scalloy. If the army needs it, the machine factory can produce it now. At this time, Scalloy was also satisfied. Even as a manager who was a technician and had limited understanding of the military, Scalloy could understand that the cannon produced by his own factory was so powerful that its performance would attract the attention of all countries. With this invention alone, the machine factory he leads will be recorded in the annals of military technology. How could he not feel honored? Produce $20 as soon as possible and enter the army for technical verification, Emmanuel said happily. Chapter 106, Destroyer. In view of Tesla's outstanding contribution this time, for the purpose of protecting the superior artillery technology of the Greek army, and this exquisite movable piston design cannot be announced to the world in a short period of time, Emmanuel personally told Tesla to his laboratory, allocated 2.5 million drachmas for his experiments as compensation. At the same time, it was guaranteed by Tesla that the technical details of the rapid-fire gun should not be disclosed to other people or organizations without the permission of the Greek army. Outside the port of Gibraltar in the Mediterranean Sea, 3 destroyers set off from the United Kingdom and just finished refueling coal and supplies at the port of Gibraltar, lined up in one column, whistled, and sailed in the direction of the eastern Mediterranean. In May 1891, 3 of the destroyers, torpedo boats, purchased from the United Kingdom, due to their small tonnage and a displacement of only more than 200 tons, have been built and received by Greek naval crews sent to the United Kingdom for training. Returned to Greece under the command of Captain Ts. Having received the news, Constantine personally went to the port of Piraeus to participate in the commissioning ceremony of the 3 warships. Standing on the pier, watching the 3 petite destroyers slowly docking, and the sailors standing in line on the side of the destroyers, the flag of the Kingdom of Greece on the mast, the blue and white cross flags flying in the wind. When the 3 ships passed the position of Constantine, the sailors saluted His Royal Highness. After the warship was anchored and stabilized, the sailors headed by Kitarides stepped off the ship. "Captain, welcome you back to Greece," Constantine said enthusiastically after speaking. He carefully looked at the sailors behind Kitarides. There were only a dozen or so crew members, and it was impossible for a crew of 10 to drive 3 destroyers back to Greece from England. Looking at Constantine's puzzled expression, Kitarides understood the reason and took the initiative to explain. "Every time we land, no more than 1/5 of the crew, without the permission of the officer, will one of the crew members can disembark. In addition to making the sailors more familiar with their ships, sea life, and shipmates, it also keeps the warships on alert at all times." In the late 18th and early 19th centuries, many French and Spanish fleets gave half of the crew a holiday. As a result, the lack of manpower was attacked by the British fleet. I see. Constantine nodded, indicating that he understood. It seems that under the strict training of the British, these crew members have learned the British naval regulations thoroughly. The reason for this rule is that when the Dutch fought in the Anglo-Dutch War, they raided the Thames River and dragged away the prisoners of the British naval flagship. The Royal Navy also stipulates that whenever a ship docks, in addition to the captain, only a maximum of 1/5 of the crew on board can be allowed to go ashore, and the crew members who go ashore also strive for the consent of the captain. Generally, they are responsible for purchasing supplies, and it is very rare for the crew to have a holiday. Seeing Constantine rouse a look of interest, Kitarides went on to explain. "It seems that the rest of the crew on board, Captain Kitarides, from today onwards, you are the commander of this destroyer fleet," Constantine said, "although These 3 ships are small boats with a displacement of no more than 300 tons. The torpedoes they are equipped with are deadly weapons for the enemies of the Greek navy. Constantine encouraged. Speaking of this, Constantine couldn't help but complain about the British. The main weapons of these 3 destroyers were the British William White torpedoes. One torpedo was sold to Greece for £600. Converted to drachmas, it was about 15,000. Drachma is too expensive. The two were chatting about the navy, and Cantaratus suddenly said to Constantine, "Your Highness, I wonder if you have any idea of forming a marine corps for the Greek navy." "Marines? Do we need marines?" Constantine asked curiously. Most of Constantine's thoughts were spent on the Greek army. The huge army advantage of Ottoman firmly attracted Constantine's attention. What role can the Marine Corps have when facing the Ottomans in Greece? "Woolen cloth, Your Highness, islands in the Aegean Sea," Cantaratus reminded. "Once there's a war between Greece and the Ottomans in the future, we will definitely take back the islands where a large number of Greeks live. If the navy can have a marine corps, it will be convenient for the Ottoman soldiers to be stationed on the islands in the future and need to land too much." Constantine was stunned for a moment, but he thought so. Almost all of the islands in the Aegean Sea were Greeks. It was natural for him to have a marine corps who were familiar with water and were good at amphibious landings. "Do you have any ideas, Captain?" The two came to the street near the dock area and found a coffee shop with a quiet environment. "That's it, Your Highness. When I was training in the UK, I saw that there is a kind of rubber boat in the UK. It's very simple. It's just with a few rubber tires. After inflating, the small hull can float on the water." Cantaratus said in a low voice, fattening down his coffee mug. "Rubber boats, island landings, and marines." Constantine recited these 3 terms in his heart. "How many people do you think the Greek Marine Corps needs?" Captain Constantine asked www.uxiaspit.com. After all, Constantine was not a professional navy, so it is still up to the navy professionals to give advice on such matters. "The number of people doesn't need to be large. About 1,000 people are enough. You just have to be familiar with water quality. Of course, there are some special requirements for weapons, and some lightweight fire support weapons are needed." Constantine tapped the table with the fingers of his left hand, thinking about the moral role of the landing team. He was very inspired by what Cantaratus said about landing on the island. "Captain, I have a doubt. A large number of soldiers implement amphibious log-in. Do you think it is feasible under the current technical conditions?" Constantine asked seriously. Constantine was a little uncertain about the feasibility of logging into combat, but he was inspired by Cantaratus, so he had this doubt. "It is only feasible under one condition, that is to the other party's important port cities. Otherwise, according to the current technical conditions, it is impossible to send a large number of soldiers to land." Cantaratus heard Constantine's question, thinking of Greece's current imaginary enemy, only Ottoman. "I guess that His Highness was inquiring about the feasibility of landing on the coast of the Aegean Sea in Asia Minor," and quickly returned to Deo, wanting to dispel Constantine's crazy idea. "Under the current technical conditions, such a cross-sea expedition is simply not something that Greece's strength can do. I can give you 2,000 soldiers who are familiar with water, Captain Cantaratus. From today, your rank will be promoted to major. In addition to commanding the destroyer formation, this Marine Corps will also be given to you, and you will train them." This is not a random promotion by Constantine. The original captain of the Navy should have been promoted after receiving training as a British naval officer. Chapter 107, Marines. Hearing that Constantine had agreed to form a Marine Corps in the Navy, Cantaratus was overjoyed. After the Greek Navy had the Marine Corps, at least in the future Navy's scheduled battlefield, the Aegean Sea, it could play an important role in the battle for the island capture. Greater effect only the Marine Corps has it. But the problem of how to land a large number of Marine Corps soldiers in a timely and effective manner still exists. The 2,000-person Marine Corps is not a small number. How to quickly and effectively deploy thousands of soldiers in a short period of time. Sending it to the ground is also a tricky hassle for a unit like the Marine Corps. Due to the special scheduled battlefield, the coast, it is destined to be a difficult thing to supply for such a unit. Soldiers' equipment and supplies for combat are unclear. Rifles, bullets, grenades, food. According to Gustidine's plan, such troops equipped with lightweight mortars are an excellent choice, even if the mortars are already extremely lightweight compared to the cannons at this time, the weight of 50 to 60 kilograms, but for a special branch such as the Marine Corps, It is not a small postgraduate entrance examination. Imagine using a 1.5-ton field gun, which is already the lightest ordinary cannon, instead of a mortar, to be used as fire support for the Marine Corps. The picture can't imagine how to put such a heavy thing, transport from the warship to the intended landing site. To sum up, the things that the Marine Corps must be equipped with are not light in weight. For them, how to transport their necessary combat materials to the landing coast is a problem under extreme conditions. Soldiers can swim ashore. However, no matter how vigorous a soldier is, with a weight of tens of kilograms, or even heavier, when he goes into the sea, he may not be able to escape the fate of drowning. Think of what is it like to swim in seawater with a load of dozens of kilograms on your back. Therefore, for these Marine Corps soldiers, under the technical conditions at this time, rubber boats are necessary equipment for shore landing. His Royal Highness, the Marines who can't get on the shore are meaningless. You have to equip them with rubber boats. The inflatable boat made of rubber can carry the soldiers of the landing team and their weapons and equipment to charge ashore together at a distance from the coast, Constantinople said reluctantly. Constantine thought about it for a while. He hadn't heard that the rubber boat he wanted had already been used. He shook his head and said, "I don't remember a factory producing rubber boats, and neither do Western European countries. His Royal Highness, this is not a high-tech thing, and we really need it in Greece. In the Greek industry, you have a wide network of contacts. Can you think of a way? What kind of relationship can a rubber boat have with the industry?" Constantine thought about it. Isn't it just an inflatable rubber boat? What's the difficulty? Rubber pneumatic tires in Europe have been used for so many years. Constantine continued. I mean, the rubber boats equipped by the Marine Corps are not landing boats with paddles by hand, but rubber boats that can provide power. I've seen people in the UK put an engine on a bicycle, and then these bicycles can run automatically without the use of manpower. Can we also install a gasoline engine at the back of the rubber boat to power the propeller, so that the rubber boat can carry soldiers and their weapons and land on the shore? Constantine said here. Probably he was delighted that he had come up with an excellent idea to solve the difficulty of landing the Marine road team, and he seemed extremely excited. Constantine was stunned when he heard the words, and then carefully looked at the naval major who had just returned from training. He was surprised by his sensitivity to technology. The so-called bicycle with gasoline engine is the motorcycle. Later, putting a gasoline engine on a rubber boat is not an assault boat really. With this thing, the problem of the difficulty of landing the Marine Corps has indeed been solved. There is no company that produces such rubber boats at present. Constantine hesitated. So, I need your help to develop this kind of landing craft for our Navy, Constantine said positively. I heard that there is a company that produces pneumatic tires in the industrial area. It seems that it was opened by a Greek-Congolese company. The purpose is to process rubber and produce pneumatic tires. You can try it out. Now the bicycles produced by the Greek machinery factory seem to be the same tires. Although Constantine felt that it was a bit unreliable to use the current technical means to produce assault boats. After all, the current gasoline engine has only appeared a few years ago, and the technology is very immature. But since Constantine, the Marine Corps commander, was enthusiastic about it, and he was unwilling to discourage Constantine, pointing him, in short, this 2,000-person Marine Corps will be handed over to you. However, I have agreed to all the conditions you put forward, and I also have requirements. Add a 2,000-person Marine Corps to the Navy is also a lot of money, and Constantine also had his own plans. These soldiers must be carefully selected elites. They must have the ability to land at night, be brave in battle, and have strong fighting spirit. This is the goal of the Marine Corps, and this Marine Corps must achieve these goals. Constantine also expressed his request www.wuxiaspit.com. He has vaguely raised his eyebrows about the purpose of this special unit. Constantine heard Constantine's request and felt that the Crown Prince's request was not consistent with his original goal of participating in the Aegean Island landing battle. The Ottoman islands in the Aegean Sea, except for a few islands, did not have many soldiers. He could not see such combat conditions, so there was no need for the soldiers to be familiar with landing at night. This harsh condition feels more like it is prepared to attack the port cities along the Ottoman Aegean Sea. After hesitating for a moment, Constantine agreed, sighing inwardly. It seems that the commander of this Marine Corps is not so easy to serve. Do you feel that the Greek Navy needs to add more warships to deal with the threat of the Ottoman Turkish Navy, Captain? Constantine asked Constantine, a naval professional. Although it feels that when Greece is in conflict with the Ottomans, as long as the two cutting-edge protective cruisers deployed at the mouth of the Congo River after their future service are transferred back to the Mediterranean Sea in time. The Greek Navy already has enough strength to protect its narrow coastline, but in order to ensure everything is safe, Junshi Tanton still wanted to seek advice from Navy personnel if the situation warrants. New warships can also be built in local shipyards in Greece. Greece itself also has a shipyard and has experience in manufacturing warships. Greece built the coastal defense battleships King George and Queen Olga successively in 1867. When the Congolese government purchased warships, the head of her local Greek shipyard once came to lobby Constantine, but after comprehensive consideration, Constantine still refused. Chapter 108, Reason. Because the level of the two self-made warships in Greece is really common, the two warships King George and Queen Olga are not so much two warships as two merchant ships with artillery installed, even when they were just built. The speed can only reach 10 knots, served in 1867, due to years of service and mechanical wear and tear. The current speed of about 5 knots is not bad, it is not good at all. Rather than saying that they are now warships, it is better to say that they are two floating naval forts. Therefore, when he heard that the Congo region would buy warships, Constantine refused the request of the head of the local Greek shipyard to obtain the order. Your Highness, whether the Greek Navy needs to add more warships depends on your positioning of the strategic goals of the Greek Navy. After a moment of silence, Cantaratus responded, if you just need the Greek Navy to protect the Greek coast, then the Greek Navy is now enough. Constantine nodded, stopped talking, and ended today's meeting. Kiribati, a small town on the Adriatic coast of the Peloponnese, is an important grape-producing area in Greece due to its suitable climate. Every time the grapes are ripe, the continuous vineyards are always filled with harvests. Joy bees are buzzing and busy among the rows of green vines, the breeze is blowing, green waves are rippling in the vineyard, the branches of the grapes are twisted and twisted on the support made of wood, and there are clusters of purple grapes hanging from the branches. The particles are huge and round, and the green vineyards are filled with the fragrance of grapes. There is no doubt that this year's vineyards will usher in a bumper harvest. Under the grape trellis in the garden, the Crester family is having lunch. The hostess, Ivy, with an apron around her waist, is taking care of two children, about 5 or 6 years old. Spoon lowered his head and nibbled at the bread slices soaked in milk on the dinner plate. After the two little guys finished eating the milk-soaked bread on the plate, Ivy looked at her silent, sad-faced husband Christo at the table, sighed, walked behind the two little guys, and touched her. Holding the heads of the two children, he bent over and leaned over between the two children, and said softly, after eating, let's go and play in the vineyard. Watching the two brothers and sisters go to the garden hand in hand, they made a childish slapstick. Eva walked to the dining table, sat down on the seat of the previous child, looked at her husband Christo, and asked in a low voice, dear, you came back from the market today, and you have been frowning and not speaking. What happened? Is it because the price of raisins is not good this year? Ivy asked softly, looking at her husband who didn't move the food on the plate at all. Christo looked up at his wife, and his heart was even more sour. His wife was virtuous in Schumann, and the housework was well organized. Due to the low wheat yield of the family's 50 acres of land, Christo saw that the surrounding farmers had switched to planting and harvesting. Yes, the grapes are also moderately priced. I also moved my mind and switched to grapes 4 years ago. From planting the vines to harvesting the grapes, there are about 3 to 5 years, and there is no harvest. The vines need time to grow in order to let their vines produce grapes early and end the days of no income at home. The husband and wife have been up early and late in the past 3 years, diligently tending the vineyards, weeding and applying pesticides, fertilizer support, and careful care. This year's grapes, the vines are about to receive their first grapes, and the grapes are growing satisfactorily, with clusters of grapes hanging on the vines in the garden. Seeing that the couple's 3-year hard work is about to usher in the harvest this morning, when it was just dawn, Christo, who was very excited, went up to the market, intending to find out about the raisin market this year, but the answers that the raisin merchants told him left him dumbfounded. Poor Christo, the price of raisins this year is not high, and in the best case, it's probably only half of last year's price. Raisin purchaser Matayarev, hearing about the first receipt of Christo's vineyards after the news, he looked at Christo, who was full of disbelief, with pity. Why, Matayarev, why did the price of raisins drop this year? Christo asked in a trembling voice, holding back his turbulent mood. Damn. The French, They raised the import tariff on Greek raisins, which caused the price of raisins in the London market to drop by 70% all of a sudden. It took a while for Christo to recover from this thunderous news, and wandered along the way home in despair, stumbled and moved, walking to no man's place on the way. Christo, a big man, squatted on the ground and burst into tears in order to persist until the grapes are received. The family has not made any income in the past 4 years. Except for the savings, they rely on loans to survive. The vineyard has just been on the right track, but the market price of the grapes has plummeted. It was originally planned that after the vineyards were producing normally, the cost of building the vineyard and the loan in 3 years would be repaid in 2 or 3 years, but now everything has gone down the drain. www.wooksiaspit.com. Thinking about the hard work the husband and wife spent in the vineyard in the past 4 years, Christo cried even more sadly. It was not until nearly noon that he returned to the vineyard. Standing on the road, Christo looked at the vines that could not be seen in his house, and had two completely different moods: the infinite joy in the morning, and the gnashing of teeth at the moment when Christo returned home. Looking at his wife who was preparing lunch, he opened his mouth to speak countless times, but he couldn't bear to say it. Looking at his wife who was sitting across from the dining table, she looked uneasy, so I might have guessed something with his left hand. He rubbed the bridge of his nose, his eyes were red, and he said tremblingly, "Evie, it's over. The price of raisins this year has dropped dramatically. I'm afraid we can't count on our receipts this year." Hearing this, Ivia clenched her apron's hands, her knuckles turning white. "Can this news be confirmed?" Ivia asked. 2 lines of clear tears rolled down her cheeks. She held the apron with both hands, wiped away the tears, and asked in a mournful voice. Christo sat on the table with his elbows on the table and his head on his palms. One sentence seemed to exhaust all his strength. He drooped his head and didn't answer, just nodding his head sullenly. The dining table under the vines is deadly silent. In the royal palace on Constitution Square, in the king's office, Constantine and Chief of Staff Emma and Nor are sitting on 2 high-backed chairs in front of His Majesty's desk, reporting to King George the changes in the army. During this period there was a sound of squeak, and Prime Minister Tarichupis hurried in and said anxiously, "Your Majesty, there is an emergency." Interrupted the report of the 2. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109, Solution. The 3 people in the office looked at the flustered Prime Minister and were amazed. King George stood up from behind the desk, went to meet him, and asked, "Mr. Prime Minister, what happened?" "Your Majesty, I just got the news that the French customs has raised the tax on imported raisins, and the price of raisins in the international market has plummeted," Trachupis said to the 3. The 3 people who heard the news were all shocked. Grapes are an important economic crop in Greece. In the past 2 years, the annual export volume of raisins in Greece has reached about 80,000 tons, and the value can reach 80 million drachmas. It is one of the main sources of income for Greek farmers at present. Among the bulk export commodities of Greece, cotton is the most valuable. In addition, it is raisins for such an important commodity. The severe price drop will have a blow to the Greek economy and affect the income of grape farmers. King George asked solemnly, "I remember that the raisins needed by the French wine industry have always been imported from Greece. Why did the French suddenly raise tariffs this year? What happened to the French wine industry before this?" The French viticulture industry was devastated by phylloxera. Since this year, the local grape plantations in France have begun to recover from the depression. The reason why the French government will suddenly increase the import tariff of raisins is because of the influence of grape growers. Trachupis sighed. The French are crossing the river and tearing down the bridge in previous years, due to the influence of phylloxera on its own grape production. The grape production in France was seriously insufficient, which triggered a grape crisis. The French winemaking industry would import a large amount of raisins from abroad. Under the guidance of the market, growing grapes in Greece has become a piece of cake. Profitable things, Greek farmers eagerly joined the ranks. France's own grape planting industry suddenly resumed, but Greek farmers were unaware and influenced by the inertia of the market. Instead of reducing planting, they increased the amount of planting. If the price of raisins has been low this year, what is the worst case, Mr. Prime Minister? Constantine asked with concern. If the price of raisins does not improve, a large number of farmers in Greece will go bankrupt. and the government's revenue will also be affected. The 3 remain silent. The raisin crisis has a huge impact on Greece in the original time and space. Greece was hit by the raisin crisis, like a domino, causing a series of evil consequences. The export of raisins was blocked, the economic pillar collapsed, the government's fiscal revenue was affected, the huge foreign debt owed could not be repaid on time, the financial bankruptcy, and the turbulent social situation caused people's dissatisfaction. Advocating war, the Greek army was forced to take on Ottoman Turkey in 1897. The Greek government, which was already financially bankrupt, had no money to fight, and could not mobilize more personnel to join the army. The Greek army, which was dissatisfied with 50,000, was forced to attack the dominant army of Ottoman Turkey. The result was obvious. The Greek army, which was seriously ill-prepared, suffered a crushing defeat. Various creditor countries took the opportunity to take over Greece's finances and took a series of measures to ensure the income of the Greek government to pay Ottomans reparations and repay foreign debts. It can be said that a series of misfortunes in Greece before the First World War all started with raisins, just such an inconspicuous commodity. Greece has had such a big reaction, which shows the fragility of the Greek economy in history. In fact, since Greece became independent from the Ottomans in 1830, it has always been a relatively poor country. As mentioned earlier, every year a certain number of Greeks immigrate and leave Greece to live in other countries. Ironically, one of the options for Greeks to emigrate included their former suzerain, Ottoman Turkey. Yes, emigrating to the more affluent parts of the western Anatolia coast is also an option for the Greeks. The reason why Constantine is relatively stable at the moment is that in this time and space, the economic development of Greece is much stronger than that in the same period of history. Although the raisin crisis still occurred, its impact on Greece was far less fatal than that of the original time and space. Thinking of this, Constantine asked, "What can we do about this, Mr. Prime Minister?" Although the French will definitely reduce the import of raisins from Greece in order to protect their own grape planting industry, the demand for raisins has not shrunk in the UK and the Netherlands as well. The main problem now is that the sudden response of France has led to an oversupply of raisins in the market, causing the market price to collapse. The best way now is to raise the price of raisins in the international market, Trikoupis said. "Let's just release some good news, okay?" King George said, "It is better for us in Greece to increase the consumption of some wine. I hope that His Majesty will allow the Greek soldiers to drink wine in their daily diet." Trikoupis' method, well, is to expand domestic demand. The Greek army has about 50,000 people. Even if they add wine to their diet and consume more grapes, the impact on the raisin market is limited. "Your Highness, didn't you recruit tens of thousands of indigenous soldiers in Congo? Also add wine to their diet?" Trikoupis asked. Constantine was stunned when he heard the words, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "The welfare of this indigenous soldier is a little better, Prime Minister. Even if the indigenous army distributes wine, I am afraid it will have a limited impact on the price of raisins," Constantine said. "Prime Minister, let me help you think of a solution," Constantine said, looking at the anxious Prime Minister. After speaking, he summoned the guards at the door and ordered, "Go and invite Nina, the person in charge of the pharmaceutical company." After 4 years of development, the original artemisinin factory, with the assistance of Philip and other medical scientists, has become the largest pharmaceutical company in Greece, and its products are not only limited to artemisinin, such as medical alcohol is also a product of the factory. Everyone continued to discuss the impact of the raisin crisis, and after a while, Nina walked in a dusty manner. After greeting everyone, Constantine said, "Nina, please come here to solve the problem of unsaleable grapes in Greece. I want to ask you if your company can find a way to consume some of the excess grape production in Greece." In the production process of artemisinin, a large amount of acetone is used as an extractant, and alcohol is used as the raw material for the production of acetone. Compared with fermenting grapes to produce alcohol, it is more economical to use other crops, such as potatoes, Nina said. Chapter 110, Method. "And, Your Highness, we, Philip Pharmaceuticals, mainly named in honor of Dr. Philip's contributions, hence the name, are now a public company, and a considerable part of our stock is traded on the stock exchange, and we are responsible for all shareholders," Nina emphasized to everyone. "His Royal Highness, as you said, the use of grapes to make alcohol, which obviously loses money once it leaks out and becomes known to the public. I am afraid that our Philip Pharmaceutical Company will soon cause trouble." At this time, Constantine reacted and patted his head. forgetting that the current Philip Pharmaceutical Company is already a listed company. Constantine also specifically reminded Nina to sell 10 shares on the Athens Stock Exchange, although the Greek royal family still owns a considerable part of the shares and is the major shareholder of Philip Pharmaceuticals. Such a thing that obviously damages the interests of the company will undoubtedly be questioned by other shareholders. Nina looked at the people in the office who were frowning at the overproduction of grapes, and suggested, although we Philip Pharmaceuticals can't help you, I personally have an idea. When everyone heard these words, their eyes instantly focused on Nina. You also know that the shipping industry in Greece is developed. Why don't you think about it? Nina looked at everyone and said, Nina, the shipping industry and wine have, before Constantine could ask the question, Trachupis, who suddenly realized, said excitedly, hi, yes, doesn't the shipping industry need a lot of wine, Ms.? Nina means that those sailors who are drifting at sea live all year round at sea and need to consume a lot of alcohol on weekdays. After Trachupis' reminder, Constantine also woke up. In this era, navies of various countries, sailors on cargo ships, and wine are all popular and common drinks like the rum that's so popular among the crew. People's traditional impression of pirates is also that the rum bottle is always inseparable. There are two reasons for this. First, wine is not easy to spoil. Because ships need to sail on the vast sea all year round, they carry fresh water in wooden barrels when they leave the port. It is conceivable that this method cannot be preserved for a long time. In a few days, the water in the bucket will begin to deteriorate, and green algae will grow, which is sticky and slippery, and has an unpleasant smell, and wine has a longer shelf life. Therefore, for the sailors who drift at sea all the year round, wine is fresh water. Second, rum can prevent scurvy on the ship. Due to the lack of fresh food, the food of the crew is generally dry bread, cured meat, salted beans, etc., which are difficult to swallow. Such a poor dietary environment causes the crew to lack vitamin C and are prone to scurvy, while rum has a preventive effect on scurvy. Of course, the effect of wine is even better. Wine is more nutritious than rum. Thinking of this, Constantine said, that would allow the naval personnel to reserve more wine. Anyway, they also need a lot of wine. There is finally a way to deal with the grape production crisis in Greece. In this way, Mr. Prime Minister, we can only rely on ourselves to solve the problem of excess grapes. Your government will find a way to encourage winemaking this year, and of course those shipping companies will also work hard to win their orders. King George instructed, inform the Greek newspapers of these news and release good news. It is best to raise the price of raisins in the international market first. The Armament Department also stores some wine for the soldiers. King George turned to Emmanuel. These measures are all expedients, although it can avoid a large number of bankruptcy of farmers who grow grapes in Greece in the short term. After all, it is impossible to use non-market methods to alleviate the difficulties every year like this year. Since the grape growing industry in Western Europe has begun to recover, then the problem of excess grape production in Greece is the problem. Can some grape growers switch to other crops to fundamentally reduce the future grape production in Greece and solve the problem completely? King George asked. Greece has many hills and hills, and the land is relatively barren. The reason why people plant grapes one after another, in addition to the guiding role of the market, is also an important reason for the lack of suitable crops for planting, and grapes are precisely a crop that is more suitable for the geographical conditions of Greece. Actually, although there are not many other cash crops suitable for growing in Greece, it is not without them. Constantine said, mulberry tree. The reason why Constantine said this is because, although it cannot be compared with Huaxia, the birthplace of sericulture, Greece has the longest history of sericulture, at least in Europe. Due to the role of the Silk Road, Chinese silk was able to be trafficked to Europe by merchants who traveled long distances. The appearance of silk has sparked the frenzy of Europeans. Of course, www.wuxiaspit.com are those powerful people, Europeans wearing shoddy linen clothes or animal skins, spare no expense to buy silk from China, like those portraits of European nobles, businessmen, and religious people that were widely circulated in later generations. They wore colorful and gorgeous costumes, either bright yellow or pure white. No doubt, they were all silk. Later, the Eastern Roman Empire acquired, steeled, silkworm raising technology from China. The place where a large number of mulberry trees are planted is in the Peloponnese Peninsula in southern Greece. As for the later sericulture in Italy and France, it was actually passed down from Eastern Rome. As an aside, the high-end silk industry is now in the hands of France, Japan, and Italy. Although Huaxia's silk industry has a large output, it is of medium and low grade in the world silk market. Mulberry Trachupus was hesitant to consider Constantine's suggestion, but silk is generally suitable for the luxury goods industry, and consumption in Greece is limited anyway. It is also an alternative to grapes, and raw silk itself is also useful in military affairs, such as the propellant of large caliber artillery. You can use raw silk to contain it, Constantine said. Can raw silk be used as a propellant for large caliber artillery? Your Highness, why didn't I know about this? Emmanuel asked suspiciously, looking at the confused expression of the chief of the general staff, which did not seem to be a fake. Constantine couldn't help but be stunned for a moment, and then reacted. Raw silk was used for the loading of large caliber artillery propellants, which was later discovered by the Japanese, and has not yet appeared. Woolen cloth. So he changed his mouth and said, the big deal, is it still exporting to the Eastern Mediterranean like the current cotton? It's all textiles anyway. Chapter 111, Salonika. In the small town of Kiribati, Christo, who was forced to be helpless by luck, came to the city market again the next morning and asked if the price of raisins had changed. Just at the entrance of the market, a loud noise was heard. Looking up, a group of people gathered in the small square, as if they were discussing something. When Christo saw this scene, his eyes lit up. In previous years, when the market was very lively during the raisin trading season, there was indeed a movement. He trotted forward. Christo stood behind the crowded crowd, raised his toes, and through the gap, saw a middle-aged man holding a newspaper in the middle of the crowd, reading the news to everyone. The Prime Minister announced yesterday that he will vigorously support the Greek wine industry and expand the domestic market demand. The man's loud voice revealed joy. The general manager of the Spanish Congolese Corporation, Costabrao, announced that he will purchase 5,000 barrels of wine in Greece this year and next, in response to the Prime Minister's call to supply the company's shipping companies. 4. The trade between the Republic of Congo and Europe. The Greek Congo head office occupies a considerable part of the commodities such as sugar, rubber, copper ore, palm oil, timber, rice and other commodities imported by Greece. For convenience, simply set up a shipping company, in addition to a small amount of passenger transport, mainly to transport the company's goods. So far, the total displacement of the ships of the shipping company has reached 100,000 tons, and there are 4,000 seafarers on the route between the Congo River and the Eastern Mediterranean. In addition to transporting raw materials and agricultural products from the Eastern Mediterranean, it is also responsible for the transport of domestic industrial products from Greece, such as cotton cloth and pharmaceuticals, to the Congo. After learning of the serious backlog of grape production in Greece, Costablum decided to increase the purchase of low-end and medium-end wines in the country for the seamen's supply at sea. At Constantine's Q, the two major shareholders of the steel mill, the London-based shipping tycoons, the Laris brothers and the Radokanaski family, both expressed their willingness to purchase a shipment of Greek wines. Vals, don't give a shit. Hurry up and continue reading. Yes, everyone is anxious to know whether the price of raisins this year can be restored to last year's price. The people around were talking. The middle-aged man Vals, who was surrounded by the crowd, said, looking at the form, it is impossible for this year's raisins to reach the price of last year. Although the government has decided to intervene in the raisin market, it is impossible to make up for the lost French market by relying only on Greece's limited volume. Vals is also a small businessman engaged in the raisin trade. He buys raisins from Greek farmers and transfers them to Greek trading companies, or sells them directly to Europeans. After seeing the news about the government's intervention in the raisin market published in the Southern European Times in the morning, I hurried to the market to inform everyone of the news. Then, what price can the raisins sell for this year? Christo cried anxiously to Vals in the crowd, thinking of the family who had no income for 3 years. Hearing this, Vals pondered for a moment, and replied, it can be about 70–80% of last year's price. Anyway, it's impossible to reach last year's price, shh. Christo let out a sigh of relief, thinking about how many raisins the grapes could receive after drying. Turning around and hurriedly running home, he couldn't wait to tell his wife Eva the good news. Woo! Woo! The loud and low ship whistle sounded off the coast of Thessaloniki port, and the frightened seagulls chirped, fluttered their wings, and accelerated away from the ship. On the side of the bulk carrier, Curus was lying on the bow side of the ship, blowing the wet sea breeze, looking at the outline of the land that was already in sight in the distance. Before leaving, I recalled the order of the Director of Intelligence, Chavlis. Your identity this time is an employee of the Spanish Congolese Corporation in Thessaloniki. During the incubation period, your task is to investigate, mapped the topography of Thessaloniki while keeping an eye out for Ottoman Turkish intelligence in the Balkans. After the ship docked at the dock, Curious got off the ship with a suitcase in his hand, and after asking a Jew for directions, he followed the instructions and came to the warehouse area in Thessaloniki. Buildings are composed of low stone bricks, only 4 or 5 meters high warehouses, connected by the stone road in the warehouse area, strung together. Coming to warehouse number 13, Curious put down the suitcase in his hand, and the door of the warehouse opened. Curious stood at the door and looked inside. Although the light in the warehouse was dim, he could still see the sacks piled up in the warehouse, clustered in several piles. Sniffing his nose, and a damp, musty smell came to his nostrils. "Sir, we are a warehouse here, and outsiders are not welcome to enter." Just as Curious was looking around the warehouse, a voice came from behind him. Turning around, he saw a man in a sackcloth shirt and brown trousers, looking at him with a bad expression. "Hello, I'm a newly dispatched clerk from China to manage the goods in the warehouse in Thessaloniki. You can call me Curious." Curious introduced himself. Vulgaris looked at this unfamiliar man, wearing a pair of black-rimmed glasses, with beautiful eyes and a thin figure. You reading www.you can't you, especially the hands are very special, the fingers are slender. Thinking of the fact that there was telegram communication, it was said that there would be an intelligence officer who had mastered the mapping technology and came to the port of Salonika, so he asked, "What is the task given to you by Director Vergo?" Chloe was stunned when he heard the words. There was no Director Vergo, and he immediately realized that this was a tentative question to identify his identity, so he shook his head and said, "I never knew that there was a Director Vergo in the intelligence department. I was sent by Chief Loves." Curious countered. Vulgaris frowned and sighed the cautiousness of the person in front of him. "I also don't remember that there was a Chief Loftus in the intelligence department." At the ruling center of Ottoman Turkey's European territories, Thessaloniki itself is also an important port, transit station, an important transportation hub along the Aegean Sea. It is connected by sea with various ports in the eastern Mediterranean, and the land is inland in the Balkans. The area's window to the sea, a city with a very important strategic location. Constantine personally instructed Chavlis of the General Staff to investigate the topography of the Thessaloniki area and draw a detailed military-level map for the General Staff to query and reference, and to be used in wartime. Chavlis also paid special attention to this place. Once he took office, he dispatched an intelligence officer as the vanguard to inquire about general information. When the two heard that the other party did not directly answer the question from the director of the intelligence department, their expressions were relieved. "My name is Vulgaris. I came here to lurk after the establishment of the intelligence service, a few months earlier than you," Vulgaris said as he shook hands with Curious. Callas. After initially confirming their identities, the two introduced themselves. Chapter 112. Project Athena. Vulgaris took Curious into the warehouse, visited the entire warehouse, and introduced to Curious. This warehouse stores the goods of the Greek Congo Corporation, such as sugar, cocoa, wood and other commodities, which will be stored in the warehouse. Here, the goods here are mostly supplied to the market in Thessaloniki area. Although your clear identity, the clerk of the Greek Congo head office in Thessaloniki, is a layer of disguise, but after all, you also received a salary, and the company's work is usually handled. Vulgaris walked in front and introduced to Curious, who was following behind. For employees like Curious, although their real identities are spies of the intelligence department, the Greek Congo Corporation will also pay them a salary, so the company's responsibilities still have to be fulfilled. Your clerk's job is to record and verify the information of these goods, such as how much sugar arrives on a certain day, how much to withdraw, etc. It's just a bit cumbersome, just be careful. The two walked among the stacked sacks, and quickly introduced the work. On the bright side of Curious, the two walked to the depths of the warehouse and saw that there was no one else here. After looking around, Curious said to Vulgaris, "Then what about the intelligence work?" Seeing Curious' cautious look, Vulgaris smiled and said, "You don't have to be so careful. The Ottoman Turks don't have tight control over this place, so relax. Intelligence collection is my main responsibility. You just need to pay attention to it. Your main job is to draw a map of the Thessaloniki area." Curious nodded, thinking that after disembarking, there were Jews with small round hats everywhere on the street, and asked, "Why are there so many Jews in Thessaloniki? I always thought that there would be many Greeks in Thessaloniki." "There are hundreds of thousands of Jews in this city. Thessaloniki is probably the city with the most Jews in Europe. These Jews are said to have originally come from Spain." Speaking of this, He was angry. This city was originally mostly Greeks, and the Ottoman government probably deliberately led Jews to settle here, diluting the number of local Greeks. As a native of Thessaloniki, Valgris is naturally concerned about the growing number of Jews. He completed his secondary education in a parochial school under the auspices of the Orthodox Church in Thessaloniki, and naturally he was more inclined towards Greece emotionally. In the days that followed, Valgris led the way and led Curis to travel around the city of Thessaloniki, drawing the surrounding ports, cities, roads, and surrounding topographical maps on a piece of blueprint after the ship of the Greek Wangerlis Corporation arrived at the case. The espionage team hidden in the warehouse in Thessaloniki handed over the collected information to the personnel who came to respond on the ship and fed it back to the intelligence department. With the abundance of funds, the intelligence department has dispatched a large number of espionage personnel. These espionage personnel are either locally recruited natives or professionals dispatched from Greece. These intelligence personnel are widely distributed in the major cities of the Ottoman Empire, such as Constantinople and Smyrna. A large amount of information about the politics, economy, and military of the Ottoman Empire was continuously sent back to Greece as the information was continuously collected to a certain department of the General Staff. A certain department of the General Staff with sufficient intelligence support also began to try to conceive a military plan to deal with the Ottoman-Turkish threat at the request of Constantine. In the Athens Ministry of Defense building, Chief of Staff Emma Inner showed Constantine a military plan drawn up by the General Staff headquarters in 1892. Taking the Ottoman Empire as an imaginary enemy, Constantine flipped through the stack of papers in front of him and glanced at it. The military plan that was quite satisfactory was nothing more than to replenish the Epirus army and Thessaly army on the front line after the emergency mobilization when a conflict broke out between the two countries. After the two main forces of the Greek army went to the border and fought defensively. There isn't much bells and whistles. Seeing that Constantine had finished reading, Emmanuel stepped forward and explained, "Your Highness, the enemy is strong and we are weak. Once the war really breaks out, Greece will not have much choice." Understandable, but Emmanuel, you are the Chief of Staff of Greece and an important high-level executive of the Greek army. You can't just focus on the army. You also said that Greece is weak to the Ottoman Turks, so in the military plan of the General Staff, it is natural to gather all the strength of Greece and defeat the Ottoman Turks at all costs. Does the strength of the navy also contribute to the plan? It's not that Emmanuel doesn't look down on the current Greek navy, but the current Greek navy is indeed relatively weak. Except for a few destroyers, torpedo boats, purchased from the United Kingdom, there are only a few civilian armed ships built by Greece. These warships only patrol the waters around Greece on weekdays. It is indeed difficult for these warships built according to the technical standards of civilian ships to perform in the future Greek-Turkish war. Constantine could have expected that, no matter how detailed the intelligence support, the battle plan formulated by the General Staff headed by Emmanuel was nothing more than revising the details of this plan. Hard to change anything therefore, he reminded. This year, the two Esmeralda-class cruisers and several destroyers, torpedo boats, ordered by the Congolese fleet will be delivered. After obtaining this part of the naval power, at least the Greek navy still has some advantages in the Aegean Sea, since the financial bankruptcy of the Ottoman Turkish government in 1875, the Ottoman Turkish navy has not purchased new warships in recent years, and its strength has fallen off a cliff. Speaking of this, Constantine looked at Emma Enor and said solemnly, "The battleship that was purchased with a huge amount of money must be of due value in the plan formulated by your General Staff, right?" Looking at Constantine, who was talking eloquently, www.wuxiaspit.com, Emmanuel asked, "Your Highness, do you have other plans in your heart?" Constantine stood up and saw that there were no other irrelevant people in the room. He walked to Emmanuel's equipment, leaned over and whispered, "Emma." Enor was greatly surprised after hearing this. "Your Highness, isn't this kind of plan too risky? Plans with too harsh conditions will have a higher failure rate." Looking at the embarrassed Chief of Staff in front of him, Constantine explained, "When the war happens, if the preconditions for this plan are not mature, then we will immediately switch to your current plan. If this plan fails, we won't have much loss, but if it succeeds, we will have a great chance of success in this war." Constantine was tempted. Emmanuel stood on the spot with a fluctuating expression on his face. After a while, he said, "What you said makes sense. Although it is a bit risky, after careful consideration, it is not without the possibility of success. If the plan fails, you can also go back to the original track. Speaking of which, your new plan is more like taking more active actions in the early stage of the current relatively conservative plan. I will organize the officers of the General Staff Headquarters to improve the specific details of this concept. What is the code name of the new plan you conceived, Your Highness? Let's call it Project Athena. Before Emmanuel left Constantine's office, he turned and glanced at Constantine, who had returned to the desk, and secretly said, I hope this plan is really like the goddess Athena. Protect the Greeks. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war in Greek mythology, the protector of Athens. Chapter 113, Army Adaptation. After the officers who were sent to Germany to study the command of the German army returned to Greece one after another, the long-planned military reorganization by Constantine and the Chief of General Staff began. Syntagma. Square Royal Palace, King's Military Council. Your Majesty, my colleagues, in view of the rapid development of military technology and the emergence of various new technologies, new weapons such as smokeless powder, new rifles and rapid-fire guns have appeared one after another, and the tactics of war have also changed. In order to adapt to the needs of the new situation, the original organizational structure of the Greek army should also keep pace with the times and make changes, said the Chief of General Staff. King George, sitting in the first seat, silently flipped through the army reorganization plan in his hand. As new technical weapons enter the army, such as M1890 rifles and 75mm rapid-fire guns, a large number of troops have begun to be installed, and the organization of the army should indeed be changed, echoed Constantine, who was sitting at the head of King George. Speaking of rapid-fire guns, King George raised his brows and asked, how about the production of 75mm guns? Can the production capacity keep up with the deployment speed of the army? King George was very concerned about the main weapon of the Greek artillery, even if he knew little about the military. The Minister of Armament Yearns said, Your Majesty, the production of 75mm rapid-fire guns in the machinery factory has reached a monthly output of 10. After the initial small-scale experimental equipment troops, the superior performance of the 75mm artillery made the army commanders at all levels crazy. This powerful rapid-fire gun with a rate of fire several times that of other conventional artillery allows army officers to control their own artillery. Confidence increased. Some radical officers even believed that as long as the Greek army could equip a large number of such artillery pieces, even the Ottoman army supported by the Germans would not necessarily be unable to defeat the Greek army. Currently, the monthly output of the M1890 rifle has reached 2,800, and it is entering the army in large numbers and distributing it to the infantry. In terms of the military's strategic material reserves, at present, 8 million bullets and 800,000 artillery shells have been reserved. Giannis directly reported the main work progress of the military logistics department. The huge military expenditure of 200 million drachma is rapidly being transformed into military supplies. King George considered two pieces of information, turned his head, and asked, Tell me about the main content of this military restructuring. The reorganization of the army this time is mainly to just division-level units. The infantry divisions of the army will be divided into two types in the future, standing divisions and capable divisions. Among them, the total number of standing divisions has been increased to about 11,000. The total number of elite divisions is maintained at about 5,000 people in peacetime. Officers at all levels and technical weapons are fully equipped. The lack of personnel, mainly infantry, will be filled after wartime mobilization, said Chief of Staff Emma Anor. Seeing that there was no objection from the crowd, he continued, At present, Greece mainly has an army of about 50,000 people. After adjustment, the army mainly has 3 standing divisions and 2 capable divisions. One of the standing divisions was deployed on the border of Epirus to guard against the Ottoman army in the direction of Albania and northern Epirus. The other 2 standing divisions and 2 capable divisions were deployed on the border of Thessaly, mainly to guard against the Ottoman troops stationed in the Macedonial region. King George listened intently to Emmanuel's report, and estimated in his heart that after the mobilization, the Greek army had about 80,000 people. This army was enough to deal with the threat of the Ottoman army distributed in northern Greece. Then, what about the adjustment within the army division? Constantine took over the topic and replied, After adjustment, an infantry division, including 3 infantry regiments and a divisional artillery regiment, has 24 heavy machine guns, of which the artillery regiment has 24 75mm artillery, a communications company, an engineer company, a field hospital, a logistics transportation regiment, About 1,000 people. Constantine briefly introduced the adjustments within the infantry division unit. Looking around, seeing that there was no objection from everyone, King George nodded to his attendant. The attendant came forward with the varnish and the seal, melted the sticky red varnish on the document about the army reorganization submitted by Emmanuel, and assisted the king to brand the seal on the varnish. At the seal, King George I stood up and said to the crowd, "I agree to this military restructuring." This concludes the Imperial Military Conference. After King George left the meeting room, everyone continued to discuss the details of the change. Your Excellency Chief of the General Staff, although all kinds of technical weapons are rapidly being installed in the army, but also urge soldiers and commanders at all levels of the army to learn to use new weapons, said Minister of Armaments Giannis. With a large number of new equipment entering the army, soldiers need a period of running-in period, which is not something that can be completed in a short time. Also, the General Staff will continue to increase the intensity of non-military personnel entering the army. Constantine also emphasized although technically more technical auxiliary units such as communication technology, engineer company, field hospital, etc. are not directly related to the military's military capabilities. The importance of such auxiliary units in the military cannot be ignored by the military leaders of various countries. Engineers build bridges when they encounter rivers, and open roads when they meet mountains. Without the assistance of engineers, the mobility of the troops will be greatly affected. As for communication technology, the role is more direct. It is necessary for each unit of the army to maintain communication with the headquarters or with other friendly troops. An army that cannot communicate in time cannot be expected to be in war. How much of a role it plays in professional troops with high technical requirements, such as signal troops and engineers, are different from the general military requirements. What they need is not soldiers who fight bravely, but professionals who are proficient in advanced technology. Emmanuel nodded. Both of them were very pertinent since the Greek military and political leaders decided to increase their investment in the army. He, the chief of the general staff, is like a spinning top. After the meeting, Constantine came to the port of Piraeus, took a destroyer, and went to Aegina Island, where the naval special forces were trained. An island 100 kilometers from Athens, is the training base chosen by Cantaratus for the Marine Corps. Standing on the deck of the destroyer, Cantaratus pointed to a 4,800-ton Greek Navy's coastal battleship, the Pizzeria, and introduced to Constantine, in order to train the Marine Corps, I specially applied for this warship to help. This poor warship, with a speed of only 6 knots, is basically a floating battery at sea. The only advantage is that it has a tonnage of 4,800 tons and can accommodate more personnel in the waters 1 kilometer away from Aegina Island. 2 warships stopped, only to see people on the decks of the 2 warships rushing around after Cantaratus gave an order. 2 fishing net-shaped rope ladders were first dropped on the sides of the Pizzeria warship, and then the inflated rubber boat was put into the sea by the Marines in cooperation with each other. After that, the fully armed Marines slowly climbed into the rubber boat floating on the water through the rope ladder. At the beginning, the rubber boats that the soldiers had logged in were just wandering around the Pizzeria. After the rubber boats with nearly 100 soldiers were assembled, each rubber boat was loaded with 10 people, a total of 10 rubber boat teams, opened the gasoline engine, and sent out the noise of humming charge towards the island of Aegina, 1 kilometer away. This is the first wave of logging in. There are a total of 100 people, and the rest of the team will follow the previous military actions and repeat the cycle. Cantaratus introduced to Constantine, who was holding binoculars. Holding binoculars, the 2 of them observed 10 rubber boats in sight, and rushed directly to the beach of Aegina. Then the soldiers quickly put down their backpacks, checked their equipment, and prepared for battle. Chapter 114, Ethiopia. It seems that the rubber boats are very suitable for the Marine Corps. The gasoline engines of these rubber boats are specially imported from Germany and then processed by the tire factory. The tire factory is not polite. After seeing the first rubber boat sample, its managers are keenly aware of the market prospects of this kind of boat, and put forward a request to produce an assault boat that can meet the needs of the Marine Corps, but the patent for this rubber boat must belong to the tire factory in order to increase the safety of the rubber boat and avoid the evil consequences of a bullet sinking a rubber boat. These rowing kayaks also use the design idea of watertight compartments, and each airbag is separated from each other. Even if one of the airbags is punctured and leaked, the rubber boat can still float on the sea. After watching the 10 rubber boats in the first wave, Constantine nodded. In any case, this Marine Corps had already begun to take shape after several months of training. Do you have the ability to land at night? Constantine continued to look at the soldiers on the island with his binoculars, and at the same time asked the Marine Corps commander beside him. After a long time without a response, Constantine turned around and saw Conspiracies with a shy expression. His Royal Highness, the Marine Corps has just been formed for a few months. Also, training at night is difficult. Due to the limited vision, it is extremely easy for soldiers to fall into the water and drown, so far, the Marines haven't had night training. In fact, it was Conspiracies who objected to the night landing method of combat in this era, when the communication between soldiers basically depended on roaring. Even in large-scale landing operations, the combat cases were relatively rare, not to mention the night landing operations. Such complex tactical maneuvers were indeed very difficult under the technical conditions of the late 19th century. In 2 years, Colonel, this Marine must have the ability to land at night, otherwise he has no meaning to exist, Constantine said with a frown. Captain, I have high hopes for this Marine Corps. It is likely to be of great use in the future. Do you think it was just a whim that I asked your Navy to form a Marine Corps and enter the Army's opinions? We can't adapt war to soldiers. Conspiracies was silent for a moment, then said, Your Highness, with your high technical requirements, you must increase the investment in this Marine Corps. Let's not talk about anything else, just the food. You need to put some effort into it. For example, in order to prevent night blindness, add some animal offal to the menu of the soldiers of the Marine Corps. The combat capability of this Marine Corps is related to the Athena plan currently being formulated by the General Staff. It is the key to its execution. How could it be stingy with some funds? On June 21, 1893, Constantine, who went to the Ministry of Defense building, met Prime Minister Trikoupis in front of the building. According to the Prime Minister, the Greek government received a letter of clarification from the King of Ethiopia, condemning the Italians as despicable and shameless. The two came to the upstairs conference room together. After the Chief of General Staff and the Minister of Armament had both arrived, Trikoupis explained to the three, it's about the conflict between Ethiopia and Italy. The general idea is that the two countries signed a treaty, and Italy played tricks on the Italian version of the treaty, so that the original intention of the treaty was modified, and Ethiopia became Italy's protectorate. Ethiopian Emperor Menelik II is not an easy man either. He directly announced the content of the treaty in Ethiopian language to clarify misunderstandings. Hearing Trikoupis talking about Ethiopia, Constantine's first thought was the country's unique religious paintings. Generally, the religious paintings that people see are all white people, such as or the Virgin, all appearing in the face of European white people. Interestingly, Ethiopia is a different country. Their religious paintings, such as the Virgin or Jesus, are all with black faces, which look very cute. No, it may be because they are both Orthodox countries. In order to win the wider sympathy of the international community, they also wrote a letter to the Greek government. Trikoupis held the letter in his hand and showed the three, although Ethiopia is not well known, it is also an ancient country with a long history and a long history of Christianity. In the 4th century AD, Christianity was established as the state religion of Ethiopia. It can be said that this conversion was earlier than most European countries. Ethiopia, as an African country, at the end of the 19th century, when the whole of Africa was divided up by European countries and became a colony, was able to stand on its own and maintain its independent status, which also had some religious reasons. After all, they are both Christian countries, so European countries cannot do too much. Of course, there are also those who are hard-headed and ignore this, such as Italy, so Ethiopia and Italy are openly torn apart. Constantine asked, there's no way. Since the opening of the Suez Canal, the deserts of North Africa, which were disliked by everyone, have now become a sweet pastry. Emmanuel said the northern part of Ethiopia is the Red Sea. After European ships passed through the Suez Canal, the only way to the Indian Ocean. www.wuxiaspit.com. As a late developing country, unification was only completed in 1871, when Italy opened its eyes to see the world. The colony was full of gold. The land has long been carved up, and Ethiopia, the only independent country in Africa, has entered Italy's field of vision. I came to the Ministry of Defense building to ask if the old-fashioned rifles that the troops have replaced are taking advantage of this opportunity to shoot quickly, said Trikoupis. It seems that Prime Minister Trikoupis is planning to add to Italy also, as a neighboring country. Southern Italy and Greece are very close, separated by the narrow Adriatic Sea. Are they still friendly neighbors if they don't pull back and don't bury mines? Taking this opportunity, He sold the old rifles that the army had replaced to Ethiopia, killing two birds with one stone. Does Ethiopia like our old rifles? Interjected Armaments Minister Yearns. As we all know, Ethiopia has connections with European countries. For example, the old rifles replaced by the Greek army are seriously outdated. Ethiopia is not a ruffian who has never seen the world, far behind the mainstream weapons in Europe. Can it be seen? I think it's entirely possible, Constantine said confidently. First, Ethiopia is not a wealthy player. Even if European countries don't care about Italy at all and open up the arms to sell mainstream technology, can Ethiopia afford it? Secondly, now that Italy and Ethiopia have openly torn their faces, Ethiopia is in urgent need of weapons. According to the practice of European countries, then don't take the opportunity to increase the price and make a fortune. Our old black powder rifle, at worst, is better than a broadsword and spear. It is half sold and half free. It can not only find a military budget for the army, but also add to Italy. Chapter 115, The Next Three Indiscriminate Means. After everyone's deliberations, the military finally agreed to try to sell 12,000 old Shiseibo rifles to Ethiopia. The military expenditures obtained are used to subsidize the military expenditures of the army. These weapons will be negotiated with the Ethiopian government by the Greek ambassador to Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia. October 1894, Constantinople, in a coffee house on the coast of the Golden Horn. The sparkling Golden Horn, under the rendering of the blood-colored sunset, the sea water seems to have overturned the red paint bottle. The gulls and birds burst forth, and the sea breeze swayed. Jefferson, who belonged to the British firm, put down the coffee cup in his hand, and saw Derrick, the French businessman opposite, slowly stirring the spoon, admiring the beautiful scenery outside the window, and said angrily, "Derrick, we are both about to lose their jobs. Come on, you are really leisurely." Derrick, who heard Jefferson's complaint, didn't turn his head back, and said with a lack of interest, "What can I do? The price of cotton in Greece is lower than ours, and the market share is constantly expanding. I'm about to change careers, thinking of the price of cotton in Greece." Derrick also sighed, took a sip of coffee, and said, "We have to think of a way. If the situation continues like this, our future will be over." The two were the local heads of the British and French firms in Ottoman, mainly responsible for the sales of cotton cloth and the purchase of cotton in the Ottoman Empire. With the rise of the Greek textile industry in the eastern Mediterranean in the past few years, the cotton market in the Ottoman territory, which was almost exclusively occupied by the two countries, has undergone a sudden change. Greece not only has a geographical advantage, it is closer to the Ottomans than Britain and France, but also in the eastern Mediterranean including the Ottomans, such as the Balkans, the Black Sea coast, Syria and other regions, there are many Greek merchants, and the network of relationships is intricate. A Greek businessman living in Egypt, led by Cantoriadis, invested a lot of money in the Greek textile industry, which developed rapidly with the support of Constantine and Greek Prime Minister Turkoupis. The Greek textile industry all adopts advanced electric textile machines, with high production efficiency and no drag from backward production capacity. Therefore, the Greek electric power industry has developed almost simultaneously with the textile industry and Greece's textile industry. In addition to textile machinery, it also needs to be imported from Germany. It has almost achieved the development of the entire industrial chain, such as cotton spinning, weaving, dye production, Nobel's gunpowder factory, and power stations. Imported cotton from Egypt and Asia Minor, plus a small amount of Greece's own production, less than 5,000 tons, transported it to the industrial area of Athens, processed it into cotton cloth, and sold it back to markets in Asia Minor, Egypt, the Balkans and other places. Beneficial economic cycle. The export of textiles from Greece is increasing year by year, and the textile industry has become a pillar industry in Greece. In contrast, Britain and France at the end of the 19th century had very different domestic textile industries. Since these two countries are both colonial powers, they have relatively fixed markets. For example, India in the United Kingdom and south of the Yangtze River in Qing Dynasty, the textile market in these regions is almost monopolized by the United Kingdom. The French textile industry is also similar. For example, the textile market in Vietnam is undoubtedly the private land of the French textile industry. Such markets are exclusive, and products from other countries are not allowed to enter. Of course, the textile factory owners of the two countries are more happy with this relatively fixed market, because it means that they can guarantee their income during drought and flood, and there is no one to compete with them. Everything has advantages and disadvantages. This situation has also led to inertia in the textile industry of the two countries. Since no one can compete in my textile market, why should I work hard to improve management methods and purchase advanced machinery and equipment? No need. For example, in the textile industry, even though the production efficiency of textile machines powered by electricity is higher, the textile mills in the two countries still stick to the old steam engine-powered machines and refuse to let go because the cost of purchasing a new machine is very expensive, the cost of the machine itself, the cost and time of newly trained skilled workers, and the time cost brought by the adaptation period of the new management method. A series of costs and expenses brought about by the emergence of new technologies have discouraged factory owners in both countries. Even if the products produced are of poor quality and high prices, these colonial consumers have no other choice and are monopolized, similar to textiles. Other industrial products of the two countries, within their respective spheres of influence, have exclusive markets and are only open to domestic industrial products. This comfortable situation has led to the lack of enterprising spirit in the industrial circles of the two countries, living in the greenhouse built by the government for a long time, and the competitiveness has gradually declined. However, in the markets of Europe and other independent countries, you can't eat your way. People naturally choose high quality and cheap products in the national market. This is also why, after entering the 20th century, the industrial rise of Germany and the United States led to victories in the European market. Germany and the United States have developed rapidly in the Second Industrial Revolution, represented by electrification and internal combustion engines. Instead, the original hegemons, Britain and France, have lagged behind in response and lagged behind Germany and the United States in the Second Industrial Revolution. Because Germany and the United States do not have the vast colonies like Britain and France, Germany's colonies were acquired very late. Although the area is not small, they are not densely populated places, and the market is limited, and they can be individually open to their own industrial products. Under such circumstances, factory owners and capitalists in Germany and the United States have to keep an eye on changes in the market, adopt the most advanced technology and more efficient management methods. www.wuxiaspit.com. Higher quality workers make sure to enhance their competitiveness and produce better quality products at lower prices so that they can survive in the cutthroat market. One trades off the other. Accustomed to comfort, the increasingly conservative British and French industrial circles are naturally not as competitive as the enterprising German and American industrial circles after experiencing the market collapse of independent countries. The factory owners and capitalists in Britain and France naturally cherished the only remaining colonial market, and were even more reluctant to let go of the colonies and let them become independent. By the 20th century, colonies had actually become a sweet burden, dragging down the original world hegemons, England and France. Jefferson and Derrick, as professional practitioners, deeply realized that the competitiveness of their own textiles is indeed inferior to that of Greece, at least in the market of the Ottoman Empire. However, to let them concede defeat in such a disheartened manner is not reconciled at this time. Britain and France were in their prime, especially the United Kingdom. At this time, the national strength was at its peak and it was unprecedentedly powerful. Jefferson surrendered to the Greek merchants and conceded defeat. The pride of the British Empire could not bear this humiliation. Thinking of this, Jefferson rolled his eyes, stood up, looked over the table, and whispered to Derrick, "What do you think of this idea? It's time to teach the Greeks a lesson and let them know whose territory this is." Jefferson laughed wickedly. Hearing Jefferson's attention, Derrick secretly despised and said, as expected of a country founded by pirates, business competition is not a rival. So he secretly used inferior means. With a compliment on his face, he said, "This is a good idea, Jefferson. I can pay half of the bribe, waiting for your good news." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116, Trade Barriers. In recent years, Puliakis has been very proud of spring. Since he is also a Greek and has business experience, he has caught up with Constantinople, a big man in the Greek textile industry, and has relied on shipping from Greece. The high-quality, low-cost cotton that came, Puliakis, a second-tier cotton dealer, became very popular after several years of hard work. Due to the excellent sales performance, after consulting Constantinople, Puliakis officially obtained the status of the exclusive agent of Greek cotton in the Constantinople area, and the money scene is very good. Constantinople, As the largest city in the Ottomans, is also the capital of a country, where high-ranking officials and wealthy businessmen gather, and the consumption level is much higher than other cities among the Greek, Jewish, or Armenian tailors and cotton dealers in Constantinople. There were hardly any that Apuleius did not know. It was learned by telegram that a shipment of cotton cloth would be sent from the Greek port of Piraeus to Constantinople today, and Apuleius hurried to the wharf so as not to delay the receipt of the goods, leading the 5 freight carriages. After receiving the goods from the cargo ship, Apuleius directed the coachman to the warehouse area of the dock after the arrival of the cotton cloth. According to the usual practice, Apuleius will notify the large and small cotton cloth retailers and tailors in Constantine to come here to wholesale cotton cloth. Apuleius had just sealed the goods in the warehouse when a team of police suddenly came and surrounded Apuleius in front of the iron gate of the warehouse, looking at the ill-intentioned and uniformed policemen around. Apuleius panicked and walked towards the leader, the head of the police station in Constantinople, Saraku, with a smile on his face. "Sir, it happened." "What's the matter, Mr. Apuleius?" Saraku, who had a grim face, looked at the businessman in front of him and said coldly, "I am me." Before Apuleius could finish speaking, Saraku waved his hand and said, "Mr. Apuleius, you are suspected of tax evasion, take it down." The surrounding police swarmed up, ignoring Apuleius, who was constantly defending his words. His hands were cut behind him, and he was taken away under the eye of 2 policemen looking at Apuleius, who didn't understand the struggle. Saraku secretly said, "If you want to blame it, you are a Greek." Yesterday, the British and French businessmen Jefferson and Derrick jointly visited the mayor of Constantinople, and Saraku happened to be there as an Ottoman official who studied in the West. Sethku was deeply saddened by the backwardness of the Ottoman Empire. After broadening his horizons in Western countries, although he despised the despicable acts of foreign businessmen bribing Ottoman officials and suppressing business opponents by trading power and money, the words of Frenchman Derrick made Sethku agree. Greece exported textiles to the Ottomans and obtained a steady stream of income. Profits. Greece is getting richer and Ottomans are getting poorer. If things go on like this, millions of Greeks in your country will probably change their minds. It was precisely driven by this sense of crisis that, despite his hatred of the mayor, as a high-ranking official of the Ottoman Empire, for his corrupt and greedy behavior, he still agreed to the suggestion of 2 foreign businessmen to suppress the Greek businessmen in the country. Commercial activities in the Ottoman Empire. Among the foreign merchants in the Ottoman Empire, the merchants who really came from Greece had the most embarrassing status according to the treaty signed by the Ottoman Empire. Foreign businessmen have the privilege of extraterritorial jurisdiction when doing business in the Ottoman Empire. The laws and government agencies of the Ottoman Empire could not govern foreign merchants according to such rules. Greek merchants should also have such privileges. However, since there were millions of Greeks who ruled in the Ottoman Empire, from a national point of view, such privileges could not be granted to the Greeks. Otherwise, the Greeks in the Ottoman Empire would not be turned upside down. Due to historical reasons, the Ottomans despised Greece. When facing the Greeks, the Ottomans always had a sense of superiority. In recent years, after obtaining the management rights of the Congo colony, the economic development of Greece has been smooth. In contrast, the Ottoman Empire is still in the dark and has not seen any improvement in this situation. People of insight in the Ottoman Empire saw it in their eyes, and they were anxious in their hearts. Of course, they must suppress and block a major industry such as the Greek textile industry that relies heavily on the Ottoman Empire market. Thinking of this, Sethku instructed to the left and right, confiscate the cloth in the warehouse, Tatoi Palace. On the grass, Constantine is teasing his 3-year-old son, George. Crown Princess Sophie sat under the sunshade and looked at the father and son playing on the grass. She couldn't help but smile. Suddenly, the housekeeper Caput hurried to inform, His Royal Highness, Prime Minister Trachupis and Mr. Cantoriadis from the textile factory are visiting, and they are very anxious to see their appearance. Constantine handed his son George to Sophie's arms, looking at Cantoriadis, who was sweating profusely, and Trachupis, who was also anxious. www.wuxiaspit.com asked, "What happened?" "Gentlemen, His Royal Highness, this year, in the Ottoman Empire, there have been many cases against Greek cotton cloth dealers. These merchants have not only confiscated the goods, but have also been imprisoned in the name of tax evasion and evasion." Cantoriadis said eagerly, "The Ottoman Empire is the largest market for Greek textiles. If the Ottomans make a slight move, the Greek textile industry immediately senses a crisis. As for why Trachupis is so anxious, it is not difficult to understand that the textile industry occupies a pivotal position in the Greek economy. which is different from the financial revenue of Greece in the original time and space, which depends entirely on the export of raisins at present. Among the main export commodities of Greece, the value of cotton cloth is the first, reaching 130 million drachmas. As for the second, it relies on the export of medicines from Philip Pharmaceuticals. The market is mainly for Ottoman and Congo, such as artemisinin and morphine, reaching 50 million drachmas. As for the export of raisins, after the crisis of the market price plunge, although it has recovered somewhat, the total export value is only 20 million drachma. Relying on the strong rise of the textile and pharmaceutical industries, Greece's trade deficit in the past 2 years has been almost flat, offsetting the cost of a large amount of imported iron ore and coal. Under such an economic situation, once Greece's textile industry exports are in trouble, Greece's economy will be significantly affected. As the economic pillar of Greece, the textile industry is involved in a series of domestic industries in Greece, such as Nobel's chemical plant, dye, the income and work of tens of thousands of textile workers, printing and dyeing plants, and even power stations. The textile industry is a major power consumer in Greece. Once the textile industry encounters a crisis, the operation of power stations will also be affected. Chapter 117. Two hard choices. Ottoman chose to attack Greece's textile industry, which really hit the heart of Greece. We must respond, Your Highness, or the Greek economy will be in trouble, Constantinople said with anxiety. I have asked the Greek ambassador to Constantinople to protest to the Ottoman government, asking them to treat Greek goods fairly, Trikoupis said with a worried face, but so far, the Ottoman government has not responded. According to my sources, what happened this time was that the local businessmen of Britain and France were pushing them. In recent years, Greek goods, especially textiles, have been constantly squeezing their market. Constantinople told himself news to the two Constantine side, except for military means, there is no good solution to this matter. The so-called sword-holding business, a country's commodity market must be maintained by military means, especially in the late 19th century. In such an international situation where imperialist powers competed for each other at this time, Greece, in the eyes of all countries, was a third-rate European country, and naturally it would not be taken in the eyes of others. Glancing at the restless Constantinople, Constantine stepped forward, patted his shoulder twice, and said, regardless of this trade friction between Greece and the Ottomans, Britain and France are behind no matter how filthy they are. Greece can't do anything to them, we can only attribute it to Ottoman. Go back first. The government will give you an explanation anyway, but there is one thing you need to be prepared for. This is not a problem that can be solved in a short time. Be prepared for a long-term response. Constantinople was full of unwillingness. He lost the big Ottoman market. Now he has to find an alternative market. He can only sell more cotton cloth to the Congo. Looking at the distant figure of Constantinople, Constantine asked quietly, Prime Minister, are we ready for war? Hearing the word war, the terrified Trikoupis hurriedly said, Your Highness, it won't develop to the point of war, right? Although the Greek army has made great progress in recent years, with the support of 200 million drachmas, various new technical weapons have been continuously installed in the army, and its military capabilities have improved by leaps and bounds, but suddenly, it will be similar to the Ottoman Empire. The war between the great powers still made Trikoupis feel abrupt. As the prime minister of a country, unlike those ordinary people who do not know the state affairs, who clamor for war at every turn and restore Rome, Trikoupis clearly understands the risks of war. Although the Ottoman Empire was called the sick man of West Asia, the camel was bigger than a horse. Since Sultan Abdulhamid I succeeded to the throne, he directly abandoned the expensive navy and increased investment in the army. But there are still about 200,000 soldiers in Constantine's view. This was actually a wise decision. For a declining empire with financial constraints, the army was much more cost-effective. The money of one warship can arm several army divisions. In the apparent strength comparison between the two countries, Greece and the Ottomans, Greece is on absolute disadvantage. The population of Greece is about 1.8 million, 300,000 more than the original time and space, and the territory is about 50,000 square kilometers. Ottoman Turkey has a population of 20 million and a territory of 1.5 million square kilometers. Such a comparison of strengths, as long as there is still some rationality, really makes people not want to fight against Turkey. Trikoupis frowned, thinking about countermeasures, letting the Ottoman Empire suppress Greek textiles. Then the Greek domestic economy will collapse, which is different from raisins. The market of 120 million Greece cannot find a replacement anyway market, not to mention the pressure from the business and financial circles. The families of the hundreds of thousands of textile workers alone are enough to give the Greek government a headache. The dilemma, is exactly the psychological portrayal of Trachupis at this time. Looking at Trachupis, who kept pacing, Constantine advised, the current situation is, either to watch Greece's economy collapse, or to take a military risk and give it a shot, whether it is a failed military adventure or an economic collapse. Greece cannot afford either of these outcomes. Wiping the sweat from his forehead, Trachupis said embarrassingly, Your Highness, if I go to the National Assembly building now and announce the news of the war to everyone, I am afraid that the members will immediately slam me down and treat me as be crazy. Although there are great ideals among the people, and there are calls to recover the places where the Greeks are the majority, the Greek officials are still very clear about the strength gap between Greece and the Ottoman Empire. That would be difficult, it would be impossible to fight, and the economy would collapse. Constantine lamented, Your Highness, can you tell me, if Greece really had a war with the Ottomans, how likely would Greece win? Trachupis stared at Constantine and asked solemnly. His brain was running fast, analyzing all aspects of the Greek army, and Constantine replied solemnly, It's possible to win, although it's not big, it's not impossible, it's 30% minus 40% likely. We don't have a better solution than military adventures, right? Trachupis seemed to be asking Constantine and telling himself this sentence for a long time. There was no answer. After seeing off the two guests, you reading www.you-can't-you-com. Sophie hugged George, stepped forward and asked, What happened? Honey. Constantine looked up at the rolling black clouds in the sky, and murmured, The storm is coming. In 1895, something happened in the Ottoman Empire, which caught the attention of Constantine, and the Armenians rioted. Armenians mainly live in the eastern identity of the Ottoman Empire, south of the Caucasus Mountains, and a vast area north of Syria. The loss of Georgia and Azerbaijan to the Ottoman Empire caused Russian influence to enter the southern Caucasus Mountains. Russia's territory bordered the Armenian areas in the east of the Ottomans, and the Russians and Armenians shared the same orthodox beliefs, which made the Ottoman Empire uneasy. In Constantinople, 2,000 Armenians petitioned the Sultan, asking the government to restrict the Kurds who continued to harass and loot Armenian villages. He was later dispersed by Ottoman police force. Soon, the killing of Armenians occurred in Constantinople. Subsequently, this kind of Armenian settlement swept across the Ottoman Empire: Bitlis, Diyarbakir, Harput, Shivas, Kama, Trabzon and Van provinces. In June 1895, following the government's intentional or unintentional hint, all newspapers in Greece began to launch a violent public opinion offensive against Ottoman Turkey, accusing its massacre of Armenians as an organized and premeditated atrocity. The newspapers called the Ottoman Sultan, Hamid I Bloody Hamid, and matched it with a chilling picture, a Q version Hamid with open teeth and dancing claws, wearing a tangled head, holding a belt in his mouth. Blood Dagger. Chapter 118, Public Opinion. When a multi-ethnic, multi-religious empire takes the pill of the nation-state, its enemies are not just from those who have malicious intentions. The nationalists in the country may be her worst enemy. The Ottoman Empire allowed domestic soldiers to slaughter Armenians, which caused an uproar in the international community. You must know that in the 19th century, one of the great powers counted as one, and they were all Christian countries. Now a declining empire, openly cleaning up Christians in the country, in such an international context, has naturally become the object of crusade by the international community in countries other than Greece. Public opinion was also shocked by this brutal massacre by the Ottoman Empire. It's just that Greek public opinion, with the government's intentional or unintentional support, is particularly violent. Thinking of the recent trade friction between the two countries, discerning people have seen some unusual signs. The Greek people read the news about the massacre of Christians by Ottoman Turkey in the newspapers, and they all felt sorry for the Greeks living in the Ottoman territory. The atrocities of the evil empire were widely circulated in Greece. In July 1895, at the Palace of the Constitution Square, in order to solve the economic dilemma, King George once again held a royal conference. It's just that Constantine and the Chief of Staff Emmanuel, who are the main high-ranking members of the Greek army, are on the list. In a quiet conference room, King George, sitting on the main seat, frowned and looked at the national economic documents of the last 6 months. Due to the setback in exports, the Greek economy shrank by 5% in the first half of this year. This is the first time in recent years that the Greek economy has encountered difficulties, and domestic grief is everywhere. There's really no other way. King George looked at Prime Minister Trachupis, almost All the methods have been used. The market of the Ottoman Empire is irreplaceable for Greece. After a moment of silence, he looked at Emmanuel, who was sitting on the right. The army is ready. We can't watch the Greek economy collapse and remain indifferent. After a moment of silence in the conference room, he asked Prime Minister Tariq, what is the attitude of the senior government and members of the parliament towards a possible war? There are some supporters, but there are also quite a few opponents, and the quarrel is fierce. The Prime Minister, who folded his hands and supported on the table, responded. After the meeting, Constantine and Emmanuel, who were walking side by side, talked. How is the formulation of the Athena plan, combining with the recent information from the intelligence department? The plan has been completed, but the risk is still a little big. Emmanuel shook his head. Through the efforts of the intelligence department, it has continued to invest for several years, and has hired a large number of intelligence personnel to collect information on Ottoman Turkey as much as possible. So far, all aspects of Ottoman intelligence have been quite complete. Recently, the army's strategic material reserves have been completed, with 20 million rounds of ammunition and 1.5 million shells, according to the plan of the General Staff. In a moderately intense war, it is not a problem to support these materials for 3 months. If the delay is longer, then, South Aegean Sea, Thessaloniki port, warehouse area under the grey sky, and the night had not yet faded away, Valgris and Culis, with 30 people and 6 freight carriages, quietly came to the dock area to take over a batch of special goods from the Greek Congo Corporation for security reasons. These 30 people were all recently sent to Thessaloniki from China. Curis observed these agile workers. With the experience of intelligence officers, he felt that these people were more like soldiers, and their behaviors were completely different from ordinary people. Curis curiously asked Valgris about the origins of these people, but was blocked by the other party on the grounds of organizing secrets. Valgris was the top person in charge of the intelligence department in Thessaloniki, while Curis, under the direction of the other party, spent nearly a year painting around Thessaloniki looking at the mysterious team. Curis whispered, what if customs officers come to check during the unloading of this batch of goods? Don't worry, I've checked everything, they won't be embarrassed. Everyone who came to the dock saw that a freighter had docked, and the warehouse and the dock were connected by wooden boards. Valgris directed everyone to enter the cabin to unload the cargo. Everyone in order, in groups of 2, took turns to carry the long wooden boxes in the cabin, and put them on the carriage. The 2 people around them deliberately held high kerosene lamps to provide lighting for the busy crowd. One of the group, in the process of lifting the wooden box up in front of the carriage, accidentally fell to the ground. The life of touching was muffled, and the mysterious goods in the wooden box revealed their faces. Among the yellow thatch, rolled out a few a fist-sized grenade with a wooden handle. After noticing the scene, Curis was stunned. He didn't show any emotion on the surface, but his heart was full of shock. The Thessaloniki intelligence department only had dozens of people, so why did they send so many arms? On the other hand, the other people around who were moving the boxes, reading www.uucanchu.com seemed not surprised, and continued their work. Valgris, who was commanding, stepped forward quickly, squatted down, grabbed with both hands, put the thatch and the pistol back in the box, stood up, and shouted loudly, be careful, you are sloppy, what do you think, where's this? While speaking, Valgris looked around and was relieved to see that no one around noticed this scene. Everyone was busy working together, and soon the goods were unloaded and transported to the warehouse. It was also Valgris who directed everyone to store the goods in 3 warehouses under the command of Valgris. Everyone first made room, stacked wooden boxes, and then stacked sacks containing coffee beans and cane sugar on it, until the wooden boxes were completely invisible. After busy work, the relaxed Valgris finally let out a long sigh of relief. Curis suddenly came up and asked in a low voice, Valgris, are we doing something? Valgris said angrily, just draw your map, why bother, you don't know. Recently, those MSLs in Thessaloniki, who are often on the street, suddenly punched and kicked those Armenians. Even the look in my eyes was very weird. I heard that the Ottoman Empire is currently massacring Armenians in the Armenian settlements in the eastern region. After a moment of silence, Valgris suddenly said to Curis, they won't be complacent for too long. It's just that, no matter how Curis asked, Valgris stopped answering, and instead started to urge Curis to work the detailed map of Thessaloniki. You have to hurry up, the headquarters is already in a hurry. Chapter 119, Cretan Uprising. In October 1895, The people of Greece all received exciting news. The rebels in Crete once again launched an uprising, demanding integration with Greece. The incident caught the Greek government by surprise. People in the business community in Greece have suffered serious losses due to the trade barriers of the Ottoman Empire, and a lot of dissatisfaction is accumulating. The uprising of the people of Crete was like pouring oil on the fire, and the whole of Greece was full of anger. All of a sudden, Greek nationalism was on fire, and the whole country was clamoring to teach the Ottomans a lesson. There is no doubt that the Greek people sincerely sympathize with the Trites, who have experienced ups and downs and suffered for hundreds of years. The history of the suffering of the Cretans is really a long story. In the Fourth Crusade, the Crusaders sacked Constantinople. Since then, the Eastern Roman Empire has been in a state of decline, and the territory of the former Eastern Roman Empire has been torn apart. Crete first became the fief of Bernier, and in 1204, he sold it to the Venetians. Since then, the Venetians have established their rule in Crete and built many castles on the island under the rule of the Venetians. The Knights of Venice stole the land from the Cretans, and the Cretans turned into serfs. Heavy taxes and labor made people feel the hardships of life, and the Cretans' resistance led to brutal repression and torture. In 1669, Crete was again captured by the Turks, after 22 years of fighting. Venice was finally defeated. The government of the Turks once again brought serious disasters to the Cretans: murder, looting, heavy taxation, arson and slavery. The brutality of the Turks' rule was even worse than that of the Venetians in Crete under the rule of the Turks. Popular resistance has become a form of life. The most recent and most influential Cretan uprising occurred in the spring of 1866. The Turkish army and the Cretans fought a decisive battle in the Akkadian monastery, the weaker Crete. The trolls failed again. Volunteer officers from Greece played an important role in this battle. There is also an episode in which the Coptic Christian soldiers from Egypt refused to fight the Greek Christians and are eventually executed. Throughout the history of Crete in the past 500 years, it is really tragic and misery intertwined, which is unspeakable. It is precisely because of the origin of Greece and Crete that the statement of the Crete uprising army, announcing the merger with Greece, aroused the indignation of the Greek people. In front of Syntagma Square, the citizens of Athens gathered densely, facing the direction of the National Assembly building, shouting, "Agree to the merger of Greece and Crete." The young-looking students and children in the crowd had a particularly fierce opinion: destroy the Ottoman villains and help the Greek compatriots to be free. Every time a slogan was shouted, the people around, either still flying with their hats or waving their coats, shouted out excitedly. Constantine, who was riding in the carriage, sat in the carriage, pulled the curtains in front of the car window, and looked at the enthusiastic people. After Constantine got out of the carriage, the guards surrounded Constantine in the middle, crowded together, passed the crowd on the front steps of the building, and entered the Parliament building. The Parliament Hall is a spacious hall with a high dome. 2 columns of Roman columns stand in the hall, and rows of chairs are bent into an arc, surrounding the rostrum. The councillors, who were sitting together in 2s and 3s on the surrounding chairs, discussing in a low voice, saw Constantine who came in, and they all stood up to pay their respects, and at the same time had a strange look on their faces. This crown prince, this is the first time in his life that he has come to sit in Parliament. After nodding, Constantine came to the front row and sat down, waiting for today's protagonist to appear. After a while, the venue suddenly became quiet, and Prime Minister Taricoupis slowly stepped onto the podium. Before he could make any move, a gray-haired, serious-looking member of about 50 years old below stood up and asked the Prime Minister on the stage about a Crete uprising. "Mr. Prime Minister, what should we do?" How to reply? Yesterday, the leader of this Cretan uprising, Mr. Vizenilis, has issued a statement to Greece, demanding that Greece merge with Crete. After the statement was issued, the Greek government felt tormented, as if it had been put on the grill. Now Crete is the territory of the Ottoman Empire, and the change of territory usually involves war for a country. There is nothing more shameful than the loss of territory for a government. There is nothing more disappointing to democracy than the loss of territory. Therefore, the Greek government's announcement to agree to the merger statement of Crete is tantamount to directly declaring war on the Ottoman Empire. As for rejection, it is unlikely whoever dares to say the words of rejecting the Greek compatriots. The Greek nationals who are enthusiastic about nationalism will be able to scold him and discredit him. At this time, the Greek government was almost driven to a dead end, and there were not many options. Taricoupis, who was on stage, did not directly answer his question. Instead, he gave a government work report, with regard to the government's large-scale infrastructure construction plan. After the unremitting efforts of the Greek people, it has recently got quite a lot of results. This includes the railway network, www.wuxiaspot.com, highway construction plans, etc. Greece's Railway mileage. When I first took office, Greece only had a 12-kilometer railway linking Athens and the port of Piraeus. So far, the railway mileage in Greece has reached 1,000 kilometers, connecting Athens with the Peloponnese, central Greece and Thessaly. Our total road mileage has reached 5,000 kilometers. The telegraph line is 9,000 kilometers long, and there are 186 telegraph stations. The number of students at various stages has also increased on a large scale. From 1,860 to 1,895, the number of students enrolled in the school reached 450,000, an increase of nearly 10 times. Obviously, our education has also made great progress. A member of parliament sitting next to Constantine whispered to Constantine, but at the same time, I owe a huge amount of foreign debt. In the end, it is nothing more than a lot of debt. Now, the Greek government has to pay back tens of millions of drachmas to British and French creditors every year just in interest. As for the principal, I don't know when it will be repaid. Obviously, this congressman has an opinion on Taricoupis' massive borrowing for the construction of enlarged infrastructure. Taricoupis on stage continued. So far, Greece's economic aggregate has reached 1.2 billion drachma after the army was reorganized. Its combat effectiveness improved rapidly. We have the confidence to face any challenge. Everyone in the audience shouted Wang and made a mess. The members helped each other and discussed in a low voice. The Prime Minister's last sentence combined with the current situation in Greece. The Prime Minister's words seem to be a response to the current situation. Chapter 120. Prepare. In November 1896, the continuous fermenting uprising of Crete led to the tension between Greece and the Ottomans, which attracted the attention of all countries. On November 3, Constantine, together with King George, received a British Foreign Secretary, the Marquess of Salisbury, who came to inquire about the situation at the Palace of the Constitution Square. The Marquess of Salisbury, dressed in a typical British gentleman's dress, with a bowler hat, a black woolen coat, and a civilized stick in his left hand. After the two sides met and sat down, the Marquess of Salisbury said straight to the point, "For God's sake, the whole of Europe is bathed in a rare peaceful time. Since the Franco-Prussian War in Western Europe in 1871, there has been no major war. His Majesty the King, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, the two countries, Greece and Ottoman, are on the brink of war. Because of the uprising in Crete, Greek newspapers have intensified their attacks on Ottoman Turkey. Have you made up your mind to go to war with the Ottomans?" The prelude to war is generally overwhelming public opinion against the enemy country. In order to mobilize the enthusiasm of the people, the content of newspapers in Greece cannot deceive people at all. As long as you go to the road and buy one, the news about Ottoman on it is shocking. The British Empire is concerned about the stability of the situation in the eastern Mediterranean. First, a war broke out between Italy and Ethiopia, and now the two are fighting fiercely on the south bank of the Red Sea. At this time, a war also broke out in Europe, which may cause a chain reaction of the situation in Europe. European countries are inextricably linked, and they have all kinds of allies with each other, especially for a big country like Ottoman Turkey. Whether it is defeated or won, it is a trouble for the rest of Europe. Britain is unwilling to see the war between Greece and Ottoman Turkey. At this time, King George and Constantine looked at each other and responded, "Your Excellency Minister, you should know that for the past 2 years, the business activities of Greek merchants in the Ottoman Turkish Empire have been boycotted. The despicable behavior of the Ottoman Empire has led to Greek merchants lost heavily." Salisbury was silent for a moment after hearing the words, saying, "If it is just an economic issue, I can represent the British government and immediately go to Constantinople to mediate and try to persuade Hamid II to let he stop his hostility to Greek commodities as long as Greece promises not to interfere with the situation in Crete." The foreign minister of the British Empire seems to be very confident in persuading Hamid II to abolish trade discrimination, or in other words, the prestige of the British Empire. After thinking for a moment, Constantine said, "Now the Greek people are angry, Your Excellency. Your time will not be too long." Salisbury was dissatisfied with such a general answer, but there was no good solution, and his heart sank. It seemed that the possibility of mediating to prevent the war was relatively slim. After saying goodbye to the British Foreign Secretary, in the palace garden, King George asked Constantine, "Constantine, what do you think of the advice of His Excellency the Marquess? There is no operability. Now Greece has no better choice. The statement issued by the people of Crete is well known in Greece. Who would dare to refuse?" Constantine replied without thinking, "Moreover, the British are also untrustworthy. Maybe the British got some benefits from the Ottomans and sold Greece." The British are such a European scumbag who can benefit from the chaos of European countries every time. How could Constantine put hope on them now that things have developed? Both the Ottomans and the Greeks have already come to their senses and are preparing intensively. At this time, listen to the British and stop. If the British mediation fails, wouldn't Greece be passive? With the size of Ottoman, the longer the preparation time before the war, the greater the advantage. Thinking of this, Constantine said to King George, "It is better to be fully prepared now. This is the best choice. Africa, Port Matadi, Congo is the only channel connecting Congo with the Atlantic Ocean. Matadi in the lower reaches of the Congo River is the most important port in Congo. Although a river port, Matadi has direct access to the Atlantic Ocean on the wide river surface. The mist is filled with mist, and you can vaguely see that dozens of ships are taking turns to load goods in an orderly manner on the side of several ships that were docked at the port, under the command of Greek officers. Indigenous soldiers lined up in a long line and boarded the ship through wooden boards under the awning on the side. A group of high-ranking Greek officials in the Congo colony were waiting for the news of their departure. Banning, governor of the Congo colony, looked at his complacent colleague, Brute, the confidant of Crown Prince Constantine. It has been more than 10 years since the Berlin Conference obtained the Congo colony, and Brute was sent by Constantine to Africa to train indigenous soldiers. In the past 10 years, Brute, according to the orders of Constantine, relied on the model of Greek officers and black soldiers in Africa, and pulled up a force of about 50,000 indigenous soldiers. Now, after receiving the order of Constantine, he will finally lead the army back to Greece. Brute, congratulations, now you have returned to Greece with such an armed army. Your position in the army, with the support of Crown Prince Constantine, has a great future. Banning looked at Brute enviously. Congratulations. As Banning, who came to Congo when Stanley started colonizing the Congo, www.wuxiaspit.com, he stayed in Africa longer than Brute. The high-spirited Colonel Cantarius, who was wearing a white Navy uniform beside them, said loudly, "Your Excellency Governor, we are going." As one of the few senior naval officers in the Greek Navy, after 2 Esmeralda-class cruisers were delivered and stationed at the mouth of the Congo, the Greek naval officer was often dispatched to the mouth of the Congo to familiarize himself with the command of the warships. I saw a soldier quickly running towards the location of the 3 and said loudly, "Report, a total of 41,000 soldiers have already boarded the ship." This time, Constantine dispatched a total of about 40,000 indigenous soldiers, and there are still nearly 10,000 soldiers in Congo for emergency use. After saying goodbye, Cantarius immediately boarded the Congo, 2 Esmeralda-class cruisers, 1 named Congo and 1 Banning, which was docked at the dock. On the masts of 2 warships and 3 destroyers, the emblem of the Greek Navy, the anchor cross and the cross flag, the sailors are lined up, standing on the side of the ship's side facing the port. The blue ribbon behind the head is flying in the wind. The warship started slowly, saying goodbye to the port of Matadi, where it has been stationed for the past 2 years. Dozens of ships with a tonnage of more than 2,000 tons were waiting on the river. After seeing the warships leaving their posts, they sounded their sirens together. Black smoke billowed from the chimneys, and loud noises in the port. The mighty fleet officially pulled anchor and set sail for Greece. Banning on the shore looked at the fleet that was gradually passing away. His heart was agitated, and he had mixed feelings. The 10 years of hard work he had spent on going to the wild Africa finally came to fruition. Thinking of this, Banning, whose eyes were wet, murmured, "I wish you luck in the exam, and good luck to Greece." Chapter 121, Assistance. On November 4, 1896, Athens welcomed a special guest. Venizelos, one of the leaders of the Crete uprising, took a young man as his sidekick, and with the help of the destroyer of the Greek Navy, he came to Piraeus port from Crete in a dusty way. After landing, the two looked around at Athens, a Greek city with a completely different style from Crete. It seemed that everything was novel on the road leading to the city center. Citizens come and go, trams running in the middle of the road, bicycles ringing constantly, newsboys hawking and selling newspapers on the road, showing them to outlanders. An unfamiliar and familiar bustling city. Venizelos looked angrily at his valet, Letterherd, looked around, curious about everything, and said helplessly, "Letterherd, I'm leaving, Mr. Venizelos, the Athenians are a little different," Letterherd said while looking around behind Venizelos, who was running fast. Letterherd's answer surprised Venizelos for a moment. Looking at the confident and calm expressions on the faces of the surrounding Athenians, he secretly said, "They are of course different from the Cretans who have lived under the rule of aliens for a long time." In the Ministry of Defense building, Constantine heard that the Greek hero of Crete, Venizelos, came to visit, and together with Emmanuel, received him in the conference room. Constantine carefully looked at this famous figure in the modern history of Greece in the original time and space: beard, brain gate, with a pair of silver round eyes, a thin face, a pair of piercing eyes, impressive. After the four of them were seated, Venizelos said directly, His Royal Highness, Chief of Staff, Crete needs your support, since the Ottoman Turkish government, after its financial bankruptcy in 1875, in order to pay off the debts of foreign creditors, it has intensified its atrocities to search and oppress Christians. If the Cretans did not resist, they would not be able to live at all. Lead also helped. Yes, the current uprising troops on Crete are no match for the Ottoman troops stationed on the island at all. His Royal Highness, the people of Crete need the help of the Greek government. Constantine and Emmanuel looked at each other, and the other party's request was also expected. Actually, Constantine was a little surprised when he heard the news of the uprising of the people of Crete. The time seemed to be earlier than the original time and space. Constantine ignored the fact that, in contrast, the people of Crete revolted faster because of Greek reasons. The straight line distance between Athens and Crete is no more than 150 kilometers, so things about Greece are naturally no secrets to the Greeks on Crete. Over the years, Greece's economy has been running smoothly, and as a result, the income of native Greeks greatly exceeds that of Crete. This fact naturally stimulated the people of Crete. We are all Greeks, you are free and easy, but we have to endure the oppression and persecution of the Ottoman Turkey with only those armed peasants in Crete, who are the opponents of the Ottoman professional soldiers. Venizelos, as early as the Cretan uprising in 1889, was already a well-known commander of the rebel army. He naturally understood the fact that the enemy was strong and I was weak, so after the uprising was frustrated, he hurried to Athens for support. Emma said calmly, "What do you all need?" The assistant beside Venizelos, Leadhurt, took out a document from his handbag and handed it to the two of them. It is a list of materials, food, medicine, firearms and ammunition. Well, almost everything is needed. In addition, it is best that the Greek army can send troops. The Turks stationed nearly 1,500 troops on the island, all equipped with German weapons. Venizelos continued to demand. After hesitating for a while, Venizelos said, "Your Excellency, Chief of the General Staff, a territorial change such as the Crete uprising will inevitably lead to a war between Greece and the Ottomans. If Greece can't resist the pressure of the Ottomans, it is impossible to achieve the goal of merging with Greece only with the weak strength of the Cretans, no matter how hard they try. Once the Greek army has landed on Crete, a war between the two countries is inevitable." Emma comforted, Mr. Venizelos, the General Staff has a plan to deal with this situation, so you don't have to worry about it. Let the Minister of Armaments, Giannis, be in charge of the transportation of these materials. Constantine said to the three. Materials can be delivered to Crete in advance. As for the army to support, we have to consider carefully. After that, Constantine personally settled Venizelos and the two of them rested for 2 days, and then returned to Crete with a ship transporting supplies. After meeting Venizelos, Constantine himself came to the office of Prime Minister Trikoupis. Looking at Prime Minister Trikoupis, who was working on documents on his desk, Constantine saw Trikoupis was good at handling government affairs, and in the political leadership, Constantine supported his idea of developing industry and commerce and vigorously building infrastructure. However, Greece is now facing the threat of war, and the Prime Minister, who is only good at government affairs, is obviously a little slow to respond. Mr. Prime Minister, you are aware of the current situation in Greece. Do you think it is possible to win over the Balkan countries as allies to deal with the Ottomans together? Constantine reminded. Seeing Constantine walking in, Trikoupis stopped his work. www.uxiaspit.com. After hearing Constantine's suggestion, he said, "You are right. Serbia and Bulgaria are also Ottoman neighbors, and both have ambitions for the Ottoman Macedonial region. His Royal Highness, do you think I should go to these two countries for a diplomatic visit now?" Trikoupis asked. Although Trikoupis was a bit slow to respond diplomatically, he was, after all, the most effective mature politician in modern Greece since the independence of Greece. The economic and political situation in Greece has been in a state of chaos. It is a marionette of various countries, and there has never been any diplomatic independence to speak of. Thinking of this, it is no wonder that the Prime Minister is not good at foreign affairs. Yes, if possible, you'd better reach an alliance with the two countries to jointly target the Ottomans, Constantine demanded. Constantine has confidence in the current Greek military strength, but after all, There are considerable risks if the three-nation alliance can be reached. Then the possibility of Greece winning will be greatly improved if the alliance between Greece and Serbia and Bulgaria can be reached. I am afraid that under huge military pressure, the Ottomans will really make concessions to Greece on Crete. Of course, this is only the most ideal situation, and it is unlikely. Constantine said not to mention anything else. In 1885 Serbia and Bulgaria had just fought a war. Serbia was defeated terribly, and the people of the two countries hated each other. The friendship accumulated in the previous two countries, the friendship of jointly dealing with the Ottoman Turks and obtaining national independence, disappeared. Now let the two countries put aside their previous suspicions and join hands to form an alliance to deal with the Ottomans. I am afraid that neither side will be willing. Chapter 122. Declare war. Prime Minister Trikoupis made an emergency visit to Serbia and Bulgaria amid tensions between the Ottomans and Greece. Unsurprisingly, the results were frustrating, with the two countries showing indifference to a three-nation alliance or a separate alliance with Greece. First, Serbia suffered heavy losses in the last war and was almost destroyed by Bulgaria. Second, the big brother of Serbia at this time, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, did not allow such an alliance to appear. In 1908, Austria-Hungary annexed Bosnia and Herzegovina. The two countries before you turn your face, it's an ally. The attitude of the Bulgarians is rather subtle. This is due to the position of relegation. Bulgarian territory, especially after acquiring eastern Rumelia province, directly threatens the core territory of the Ottomans, Constantinople. Under this circumstance, when an alliance with Greece occurs, Bulgaria must bear the main pressure of the Ottoman Empire when the war occurs. However, Bulgaria is not clear about the strength of the Ottoman army at this time. With the help of a large number of German officers, the combat effectiveness of the Ottoman army is uncertain. There is also the international environment. At this time, the major European countries still tend to maintain the stability of the European situation. For example, at the Berlin Conference in 1881, the major countries made it clear that they would maintain the current situation in Europe, and there was no unanimous agreement of other countries, prohibiting parties from unilaterally changing the ownership of European territories. To sum up, the two countries are indifferent to Greece's request for alliance. November 15, 1896, Palace, Syntagma Square, meeting room. High-level military and political leaders of Greece gathered together to discuss state affairs. Trikoupis first told the crowd that the Balkan alliance's plan went bankrupt. In any case, there is no room for delay in Crete, King George said solemnly. The situation of the Greek economy shrinking has not changed, and the Ottoman Empire's trade discrimination is the main reason, Trikoupis said with a tired and authentic expression. As soon as I returned from a visit to Bulgaria, I received a notice to convene a royal meeting, and there was no chance for a break at all. There is no reason to delay any longer in the current situation. With every day of delay, Ottoman's preparations will increase, while Greece is the opposite, Constantine said. The material reserve of the Ministry of Armament has been completed, and 20 million rounds of ammunition and 1.5 million shells are currently stored in the military supply warehouse, said Minister of Armaments Giannis. Also, the fleet that departed from Matadi in the Congo this morning has arrived at the port of Piraeus. A total of 40,000 native soldiers have been stationed outside Athens. The two warships Congo and Banning are ready to carry out maritime missions, echoed Constantine. Constantine believed that since this war was inevitable, it would be better to take advantage of this powerful moment. Italy fell into the Ethiopian War, and had no scruples about the situation in the Balkans, especially the Balkan-Adriatic region, and went to war with Iceman. King George looked around the crowd, and seemed to be asking, but also seemed to be answering, we have no choice, do we? There was silence in the conference room for a moment. From now on, Greece's military power can use any means to safeguard Greece's interests. On November 16, with the authorization of the king, Greece sent an army of 2,000 people to land on Crete. It was also on the same day that the Ottoman ambassador to Greece, Nemours, came to meet King George accompanied by Crown Prince Constantine and Prime Minister Trikoupis. King George I received the ambassador Nemours, wearing a robe with Turkish characteristics and holding a red letter box, solemnly came to the king. Seeing the king sitting on the throne, the Crown Prince and the Prime Minister on the left and right, the ambassador took out the ultimatum from the red mailbox in his hand and solemnly read out, as Sultan, descendant of Muhammad, brother of Sun and Moon, grandson and spokesman of God, ruler of the kingdoms of Macedonia, Babylon, Jerusalem, Upper and Lower Egypt, the emperor of emperors, the king of kings, the extraordinary knight who never fails, the steadfast guardian of the tomb of Christ, the true believer, chosen by the Lord, the hope and consolation of the MSLs, the great guardian of Christians. I advise you, King George of Greece, to stop using military force to interfere and harass my territory, Crete. You have 3 days to make the right choice. After Nemir's finished reading, he bowed and stepped forward, holding the ultimatum with both hands. Constantine stepped forward, made an ultimatum, and handed it over to King George. Holding the ultimatum, King Kiyoshi looked solemn and said to the Turkish ambassador Nidminius, "It's a pity, Mr. Ambassador, it's another brutal war." After the meeting, Constantine quietly came to the study in the palace. His mind was blank, and he sat there silently, not saying a word. With the sound of squeak, Queen Olga of Greece pushed open the door and walked in. Standing behind Constantine, she looked at Constantine in deep thought, put her hands on his shoulders, and said, "Constantine Ding, you are the heir to the Schleswig-Holstein-Sonderburg-Luxembourg dynasty in Greece, so you must be persistent and lead everyone to victory, no matter what. You cannot show it in front of everyone. Show weakness. All the Greeks are looking at you. www.wuxiaspit.com expect you to lead them to victory. You are the leader and the focus of attention. Don't let everyone down." Seeing her son who was about to lead the army to the front line of Macedonia in Thessaly, Queen Olga encouraged him. With a general mobilization order issued by Greece, the war officially broke out on the morning of November 17th. All the Greek newspapers had nothing on their front pages except for the bold and striking word war. News of the outbreak of war between the two countries spread throughout Europe. The Ministry of Defense building, King George signed his name on the General Staff's Operational Plan Project Athena document. Afterwards, in front of everyone, he announced loudly, "The Crown Prince of Constantine is appointed as the commander of the Thessaly Legion, with full command of the Thessaly Legion, against the Turkish army." The Thessaly Legion is the main military force of the Greek army. At present, Greece mainly has 2 legions, Epirus and Thessaly. Among them, the Epirus Legion had only 1 division, 12,000 men. The Thessaly Legion occupied most of the armed forces of the Greek army. Although he had expected this for a long time, at the moment of the appointment, Constantine still felt a heavy pressure that was almost breathless. On November 18th, when Constantine arrived at the Athens railway station, he saw a dark crowd of people at the railway station. There were scenes of reluctance to part with relatives everywhere. Women came to see off their sons and husbands, and the train windows. The soldiers who were urgently drafted into the army leaned out, looking for familiar voices in the crowd. The whistle of woo-woo was melodious, and the train leading to the war officially started. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123, Frontier Battle. On November 19th, Constantine took the train to Larissa, a city in northern Greece. After the declaration of war, the General Staff recently mobilized nearly 40,000 Greeks to join the army. The original army numbered about 50,000. After the arrival of the African Indigenous Army, the total number reached about 130,000. Larissa City Railway Station, Constantine, who was guarded by the guards, entered the Larissa railway station, only to see soldiers streaming out of the train, with luggage in hand. Looking around, the personnel maintaining order shouted loudly and commanded the soldiers. The soldiers lined up in a long line, came to the table, and listened to the commander's assignment. After these newly recruited soldiers get off the train, they will be directly divided into various units, supplementing the elite divisions and strengthening the strength of the standing divisions. Larissa Army Headquarters, Constantine entered the meeting room of the staff, and the senior officers who were seated slammed. All stood up. Constantine came to the main seat and looked at the main officers of the Thessaly Legion, commander of the 1st Division of the Greek Army, Major General Amma Inermanu, commander of the 2nd Division, Metaxa Brigadier General C, commander of the 3rd Division Mavrov Charles, the 4th Division commander, Brigadier General Amans Gup, and the commander of the 4 Congolese divisions, Brigadier General Brute, the regiment's chief of staff, Major General Canaris. He waved his hand and motioned everyone to sit down. At present, the total number of our Thessaly Legion has reached about 110,000 people, and the entire legion is currently being renovated and replenished. The chief of staff of the Thessaly Legion first reported to Constantine, quickly. "Prepare, we don't have much time," Constantine demanded with a blank expression. "According to the progress, when will we be able to start the whole army, everyone?" Present leaned over and discussed each other for a while, and finally summarized it to Canaris. At present, we need to arrange new enlisted soldiers, coordinate logistics supplies, medical supplies, etc. At least, it will take 3 days for the troops to organize. It's over, Your Excellency the Legion Commander. 3 days later, the entire Thessaly army, with a total of about 110,000 people, marched toward the northern border. The 110,000-strong Thessaly Legion, with its head in front and tail in sight, swept through the rugged mountains of northern Greece. Constantine, who was riding on a warhorse, looked at the soldiers in the queue around him, armed with rifles on their shoulders and covered with bedding rolls. Under the command of the officer, the soldiers sang songs with great interest. Hats off. In the border area, the cavalry company commander, Modus, was ordered to carry out reconnaissance activities in front of the legion. Taking advantage of the night, his 40 cavalrymen crossed the Ouse River. The cold moon was cold and the people whose clothes were soaking wet, tied their horses to a tree after crossing the river, and found a dry place to rest for a while in the thick night. Soldier Willis was so tired that he leaned against a rock, lit a cigarette in a flash, took a heavy puff, and blew out a smoke ring in relief. Modus looked at the fire that suddenly appeared around him, and was about to open his mouth to stop it when he heard a bump sound, breaking the silence of the night. Willis fell to the ground. There. Our enemies. The soldiers who were resting on the ground were in a mess, looking for stones and trees as shelters. With his back against a rock, Modus asked in a low voice to the people around him, which dares to smoke on the front line and kill him? Willis, who fell to the ground, stumbled and stood on the ground, lying on the ground, not daring to make any movement, his eyes eagerly searching around the person, and his mouth responding to the company commander. It's me, company commander. Willis, hearing that the other party could still reply, and his tone sounded full of energy, not like he was shot, Modus breathed a sigh of relief. Do you understand the rules? Smoking while you are on duty, and you are not shot to death. Good luck for your kid. Willis kept groping on the ground until he touched his steel helmet, knelt on the ground, picked it up, touched the place where the bullet was hit, a deep crater, and took a deep breath. Secretly said, fortunately, I have a steel helmet, otherwise I will explain it here today. The steel helmet is that when Constantine saw the soldiers in the army wearing ordinary hats, he placed an order with the steel factory and asked to assemble them to the soldiers as basic soldier equipment to improve the soldiers' survivability in the battlefield. Although the performance of the helmet is affected due to the steel material, it does improve the soldiers' defense ability. Did anyone notice which direction the enemy fired from? Modus asked his soldier in a low voice. Company commander, it seems to be in the direction of 8 o'clock. Willis, who was lying on the ground, put on his steel helmet again, touched the position of the crater with his left hand, at the edge, and the bullet wiped a thin scratch on the helmet. Said presumably, everyone, be careful, we are encountering scouts from the Ottoman army. On November 22nd, Constantine received news that the Thessaly Legion and the Macedonian Legion of the Ottoman Empire met near the Ouse River in northern Greece. After the Thessaly army crossed the river, the two sides immediately formed a formation, and the soldiers began to look for bunkers and dig trenches. The cannons roared and the smoke filled the air. The divisions of the Thessaly Legion, which belonged to the artillery regiment, poured gunpowder towards the positions of the Ottoman army under the operation of the artillerymen. The 75mm rapid fire gun gradually suppressed the enemy artillery due to the advantage of the rate of fire on the first day of a battle. The two sides engaged in a fierce artillery battle, followed by small-scale feints by the soldiers of both sides, trying to find loopholes in the other side. After the battle on the first day, www.wuxiaspit.com, it was getting dark and the fighting between the two sides had subsided. Constantine, accompanied by the guards, went to inspect the trenches, carefully changed into the uniform of an ordinary soldier, and instructed his guards, when you get to the trenches, don't salute me, and ask the soldiers on the front line, understand? Seeing the captain of the guards, Rostock looked ignorant and could only explain angrily, if the enemy saw the soldiers salute me, what would they do? The positions of both sides were devastated, the sparse forests had disappeared, and the gravel and floating soil were mixed together. Stepping on it, with 1 foot deep and 1 shallow, the central defense line that was bombed by the front line during the day, Constantine walked into the simple fortification and saw the soldiers leaning against a bunker supported by sandbags, wearing steel helmets, half lying on the ground. There a soldier noticed Constantine and the guards behind him. He stooped into the bunker, caught sight of the rank of Major General on Constantine's shoulder, and said respectfully, General, it's nice to meet you. Constantine walked over cautiously, Noting his rank, "Hello, platoon leader, is there anything you need to report to me?" Constantine said mildly, "General, the Ottoman shelling is very intense today. The trenches dug by the soldiers, plus the piled sandbags, are not enough to completely defend against the shelling. How about the casualties of the soldiers?" Constantine said in a low voice, "4 died and 6 were wounded, mainly our simple fortifications, which have limited resistance to shelling." After a moment of silence, Constantine asked, "Then why don't you dig deep trenches, now? The trench is only 1 meter deep, there are too many stones, there is no way to dig deep." Chapter 124, Dilemma. The soil in many places is only a thin layer, covering the rocks, and the shovels in the hands of the soldiers are simply not enough to dig trenches deep enough to defend the field guns, the platoon leader complained to Constantine. Constantine recorded this in his notebook and secretly said, "Due to the mountainous and hilly terrain of northern Greece, the soldiers could not dig trenches deep enough. For Greece, which had an advantage in artillery, this situation was more favorable to Greece." "Winter, sir." Lieutenant Winter. Seeing that Constantine hesitated, Winter immediately introduced himself. "Lieutenant Winter, don't worry, anyway, we have an advantage in strength, and our artillery technology is more advanced than the Ottomans. The enemy's soldiers are in a much worse situation than you." Constantine comforted. "Your Excellency the Legion Commander." A soldier next to Lieutenant Winter interjected suddenly, seeing that people around him suddenly looked at him. Their lips moved together, and Nuano didn't dare to speak. Seeing this, Constantine took out a copper cigarette case from his pocket, opened it, and handed it to Lieutenant Winter and the soldiers on the battlefield. Cigarettes are one of the few things that can make soldiers relax. The 3 of them squatted on the ground, and the atmosphere became more harmonious. "Soldier, what did you want to say just now?" Constantine asked with a cigarette in his mouth. "Your Excellency, Legion Commander, we will win, right, after all." Seeing that Constantine was still looking at it, he quickly said, "Loves, sir, my name is Loves." Loves' face was covered with dirt, his hair was stuck in locks of sweat due to sweat, and his yellow-brown military uniform was dirty. "Of course, Loves, this war won't be long. What is your family doing?" "Growing olives, sir. I have a hill in my house full of olives and a few citrus trees." Loves responded. "Olives and citrus are the few economic crops that can be grown in Greece. Don't worry, Loves, no matter what, it won't delay your return home to harvest olives." At the same time, Constantine, who was squatting in the ditch, reached out and brushed the dirt from Love's helmet. At the frontline command camp, senior officers gathered to discuss the situation on the front line. "After these 2 days of fighting, I have roughly understood the enemy's intelligence. The Ottoman army in front of me is about 80,000 people. The enemy is only equipped with German Krupp field artillery. The number is about 200, maybe due to the difficulty of maneuvering in the mountainous terrain of northern Greece. The heavy artillery of the Ottoman army has not been put into use. This is great news for us. According to pre-war military intelligence, there are many heavy artillery pieces with a caliber of 100 mm or more in the Ottoman army. The advantages of heavy artillery are that the shells are powerful and have a long range. The disadvantage is that they are relatively cumbersome, difficult to drag in mountain operations, and cannot follow infantry to fight. The artillery in the Ottoman army has a long history, dating back to the use of urban cannons by Muhammad I to help the Ottoman army break through the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire. Since then, the army of the Ottoman Empire has always had the tradition and habit of using heavy artillery. After getting closer to Germany, the Ottoman Empire naturally purchased a large number of Krupp cannons. Gentlemen, there is no doubt that our troops have the advantage. Canaris, holding a baton, analyzed the battlefield situation and introduced to everyone. Constantine mobilized the Congolese army to fight in Europe, which was beyond the expectations of the Ottoman army. If the 40,000 indigenous troops in the Thessaly Legion were excluded, the strength of everyone was only the same. According to the requirements of the Athena plan, we should increase the pressure on the enemy and force the enemy to ask for assistance from the rear, said Manugianaski, commander of the 1st Division. The 1st Division of the division commander, as the earliest and most powerful Greek army in the Greek army, has been used as a strategic reserve by Constantine since its inception, and stayed behind the busy line. Naturally dissatisfied, the Athena plan, even these senior officers, is unknown. They probably know the main idea of the plan, but the specific army deployment in the plan is strictly confidential. It is indeed the case. We should use the advantage of our troops and detour to the enemy's side. Canaris pointed to the military map and said to everyone, in the ensuing battle, A division and the 4th Division of the Congolese army will carry out this plan and try to outflank the enemy's flank, Brute. And the 4th Division commander, Arman's Jeep, agreed to this plan. In the Ottoman Army frontline command camp, Edmund Pasha, the commander of the Ottoman army, is discussing countermeasures against the Greek army with the German advisor goals in this Ottoman war against Greece. The German officers contributed a lot, and many German instructors left the field and commanded the Turkish army to fight. After all, the German officers' advisory group was sent by the Kaiser at the request of the Sultan to train the modern army for Hamid I and train the Ottoman officers hand in hand if the Ottoman army is defeated by the Greek army. What will be the face of the German officer corps? The scout reported that the Greek army detoured to the east of my position, as if they wanted to flank and encircle it. Edmund Pasha said with a headache such a huge military operation and the movement of the 2 divisions could not be concealed at all. The scouts of the Ottoman army easily detected this movement of the Greek army, and the Greek army itself does not seem to have any intention of concealing it, and it does not shy away from mobilizing the army in a grand manner. Gets looked at the distribution of the forces of the enemy and the enemy on the military map. The enemy suddenly transferred 4 black colonial troops. I didn't expect the combat effectiveness to be good. The Congo Division's combat effectiveness was remarkable under the pattern of Greek officers, a small number of Greek soldier battalions, and most of the battalions are still black originally. According to the information obtained by the Ottoman military, the total strength of Greece was around 50,000. Even after emergency mobilization, it would not exceed 90,000. Under such circumstances, the Ottoman Empire's army in Macedonia only needs to respond according to this number. The Greek army suddenly used a large number of black troops, which exceeded the military's prediction and assessment, and directly led to the numerical disadvantage of the Ottoman army and placed it in a disadvantageous position. What made Edmund Pasha even more unbearable was the ferocity of the Greek artillery, unbelievable originally. The German military corps in Austria was quite confident in their own Krupp artillery technology. A large number of Ottoman artillerymen equipped with Krupp field guns www.uxiaspit.com were completely suppressed by Greek artillerymen, making the Ottoman army, which was already at a disadvantage in strength, even more passive up to now. After synthesizing the information gathered from various aspects, the officers of the Ottoman command still cannot determine how many artillery pieces the Greek Thessaly Legion is equipped with. The data on various fronts are contradictory according to the scene of the shelling of the Ottoman army positions. According to the general field artillery rate of fire, it is estimated that the number of field artillery of the outstanding Sally Legion is about 450. However, according to the visual observation data of the frontline scouts, it is impossible for the Greek artillery positions to place 450 field guns. Speaking from common sense, with this number of artillery pieces, a full 450, the Greek army does not have the financial resources at all. Obviously, the Greek army's painstaking and strict secrecy for the intelligence of the 75mm rapid-fire gun has paid off on the battlefield. The artillery was caught in a glance, which made the situation of the Macedonian army even worse. The Greeks are now using the superiority of their troops in an open and fair manner, using side detour tactics, and at the same time the main force is keeping an eye on our army. If we don't respond, then we will be in a state of flanking, which may lead to the collapse of the army. If we mobilize our troops to defend the flank, the Greek army will definitely attack from the front. Once the frontal position is captured, it will still be a rout. Edmund Pasha is now in a dilemma. Chapter 125, Testimonials. Well, just, quite suddenly, I put it on the shelves. There is no defense as a fresh and salted fish. What have I done? Oops. Affected by Tao Xiao. The news that Tao Xiao sent to me always included the news of the results of the new books from the starting point on Monday, which made me misunderstand that one of them signed up on Friday and went on sale on Monday. As a result, I suddenly posted a VIP chapter last night, which caused me to make a big fuss. I made a mistake and posted the VIP chapter by mistake. Really, I'm a newbie. It's on the shelf, so ashamed. The update of this book has been very weak so far, mainly because as a newcomer, I have no experience before writing the book, and I don't know what else to prepare. I was ignorant and fearless, so I plunged into the unpopular category, foreign history. In the past, when someone else wrote a book, I always felt that this was it. This is not very well written. Can I get on it too? Now I also write a book. I feel uncomfortable. Every time I see the count reaches 2,000 words, I cry in my heart. Wow, wow, wow. I wrote another chapter as a Jingluo. After the initial passion, there is no turbulence in his heart. Since I wrote a book, I have used Baidu more than the 20 years before I wrote the book combined. The reason why the update is so slow is that after writing the book, I found that my stomach is empty, which is far from enough to support writing a book, so I hurried to nibble on materials, such as Churchill's memoirs, modern Greek history, Ottoman Turkish history, and even Byzantine history. I really miss the days of reading books. With a little hand slip, 10 lines in one eye, a few hundred words have passed. Now I am an author, coding silently and boringly. I would also like to thank all the book friends for the information provided. The magic gate is so wide, so that I can have the information to read. There is also the long-term support of readers, those who gave rewards and silently voted. Thank you, koalas. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.